Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal. See playlist for other chapters and novels. Join now our Telegram channel now and enjoy exclusive early access. t.me/blood_immortal_official. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 741, Truly Unconvinced. Chapter 741, Truly Unconvinced. The fourth punch was the most important of them all. At the same time, the sight of the explosion would definitely be earth-shattering. Taking a massive step back, Lin Fan hurled out a punch, causing the surroundings of the Spear Emperor and the Saber Emperor to vibrate intensely. Even though the fists looked extremely normal, the aura was quite unusual. That sudden attack seemed to possess everything within it. This simple-looking punch was actually in possession of all the utmost wisdoms of the world. Bam, bam, explode. Lin Fan could feel a substantial amount of force building up within the chest of both men. It was wild like a thunderbolt that had accumulated for thousands of years and was going to burst out in one go. Not good. I've got to retreat further. Lin Fan's heart palpitated with a bad feeling as though the amount of power caused by that explosion would be enough to rattle the entire world. How did it turn out like this? The Saber Emperor and the Spear Emperor let out looks of shock and disbelief. Bam! With a loud explosion, the entire world seemed to be quaking. A bedazzling gleam of light shone out into the world as the sky started alternating between bright and dark. Lin Fan covered his eyes as the brightness was getting a little glaring. And, accompanying it was a powerful stream of energy. The hem of Lin Fan's robe began to flutter while his long hair were gusted up. The aftermath of the explosion was like sharp blades slicing out at his body. If not for the fact that his physical body state was this strong, there was a chance that he could have just died under the might of this tremendous explosion. Holy FCK, the power caused by this explosion is a little way too intense now, isn't it? I wonder if those two old fogies might have died from it. But, I reckon they should be fine. This explosive force is something that originates from within. It shouldn't be able to harm them much. After pondering for a moment, that was the logic that Lin Fan could come up with. By the time the light dissipated, the world returned to normal, and Lin Fan looked into the distance before him fixatedly. When he saw that the old fogies were still standing there, his heart leapt with joy. It's good that they're fine. The power generated from this B*OBS explosion had way surpassed Lin Fan's imagination. But thankfully, those two old fogies hadn't been blasted to death. Otherwise, he would be short of manpower for his next step of the experiment. However, the tragic cries that were resounding were relentless. At this moment, the Saber Emperor and the Spear Emperor stood there dumbfounded. Right afterward, an intense pain surged through their bodies as they could not help but fumble and roll around on the ground. They had not expected things to turn out like this. This was especially the case for that hollow feeling in their chest. They were practically about to break down right now. The status of their later life was at stake now. It truly was. At this moment, both men were wearing tattered clothes with two big holes before their chests. It was evident that the both of them had just been manhandled by some inhumane technique. How about now? Lin Fan tossed his robes and landed on the ground calmly. He landed before both of them and grabbed their weapons. Not bad. Two lower-graded Dao weapons. Seems like there are quite a bit of benefit to be gained by working as the utmost being's coolie. Lin Fan chuckled out. These two lower-graded Dao weapons were something that could only be crafted by the ancient race. As Divine Celestial Level 9, 8 Desolates United State beings, they could be considered as unparalleled, powerful beings right now. However, to the utmost being, saint, anyone that had not entered the eternal God state was equivalent to an ant. Therefore, in the face of Saint himself, these guys were probably just some bigger-sized ants. However, Lin Fan wasn't afraid at all. Even if his strength wasn't comparable to the other party, he was full of tricks. If his luck was good, he might actually be able to FCK the opponent to death just like that. What's this martial art? How in the world could something like exist in this world? The Saber Emperor and the Spear Emperor howled out. The moment they received that fist, both of them channeled their powers, wanting to suppress it down. However, they realized that no matter how hard they suppressed it, it was useless. Both of them were utterly flabbergasted. Even the utmost being of the ancient race might not have a power of this level. Hee hee, Lin Fan sniggered out as he pinched the 2 lower graded Dao weapons slightly. The weapon spirits within started squirming and struggling. In fact, there were even cries for mercy rising out. However, Lin Fan ignored them and tossed them into his paradise for his demon city. Within the paradise, the big ancient demon opened his eyes and grabbed out with that colossal arm of his. Instantly, he took the 2 lower graded Dao weapons and devoured them instantly. Thud. Being mentally connected with them, the Spear Emperor and Saber Emperor spat out a mouthful of blood instantly. How dare you destroy our Dao weapons? The Saber Emperor shouted out with a burning fury in his heart. I say, you 3 old fogies have some sort of a mental issue or something. Yours truly didn't even do anything to you guys and yet you came knocking. Weren't you guys just courting death? Lin Fan asked. You'll die a horrible death. The utmost being, Saint, is not going to let you off. The Saber Emperor railed out. However, the pain at his chest was tormenting him non-stop. Every single movement he made caused him an immense pain. Gosh, enough. That is a sentence that yours truly has heard many, many times now. But alas, what a pity that yours truly is still standing here dandy and fine all the same. Lin Fan burst out laughing. There had been countless ancient race beings who had wanted him dead. But, it was almost regrettable that till this point in time, none of them had succeeded yet. Alright, enough of this crap. Time to proceed to the next experiment. Lin Fan swept his robes and tossed the Saber Emperor and Spear Emperor into his paradise. Let me go, let me go. At this moment, the elder immortal Shu was screaming out within the paradise. However, he was coiled tightly by the mythical parasol tree and couldn't break free at all. Saber Emperor, Spear Emperor, why are you guys here? How is that little degenerate doing? The moment elder immortal Shu saw the both of them, he asked hurriedly. However, when he caught sight of the state they were in right now, his heart jerked momentarily. You guys, a bad omen surged up into his mind. Could it be that the Spear Emperor and the Saber Emperor had been defeated by that little degenerate? Up till now, even elder immortal Shu did not know how he had fainted over. By the time he woke up, he found himself trapped in this place, unable to move at all. Good, the 3 of you are gathered. This can be considered a reunion, can't it? Lin Fan burst out laughing. He then looked over at the Academy of Electroconvulsive Therapy. Right now, the Thunder Trainer King had not come out at all. He was all engrossed in that purification skill. The sky above the Academy of Electroconvulsive Therapy shone with a bright Buddhist light, as though he had cultivated to an extremely proficient state. Little buddy, let us go. We were wrong, we were truly in the wrong. Now that he was at Lin Fan's mercy, elder immortal Shu relented. He had not expected this lad to be this sick. To think that even the Spear Emperor and Saber Emperor would not be a match for him at all. However, right now, something was puzzling elder immortal Shu. What happened to the titties of Saber Emperor and Spear Emperor? Why did they look so damn strange? Highs, yours truly is a man who shows respect for the elderly and concern for the young. But now, things are difficult to handle. But, don't you guys worry. Yours truly is not going to kill you guys. I'm just going to play a little game with you guys. Lin Fan said with a troubled face. Little buddy, the 3 of us swear that if you let us go, we'll never cause trouble for you ever again. Looking at the tragic state the Saber Emperor and Spear Emperor were in right now, elder immortal Shu spoke up for everyone immediately. There's no hurry, just wait a little, haha. Lin Fan poked the air with his finger as a cushy sofa appeared. He then plopped there comfortably and twirled his finger. Purify. A Buddhist light shone brightly with an extreme dazzle as a weird phenomenon appeared. Are you trying to purify us? No, no, ding, purification failure. ... The moment all 3 of them saw that Lin Fan was about to purify them, their faces turned frightfully pale. However, they suddenly realized that the skill of purification of the other party was still weak. Hence, they heaved a sigh of relief. Little buddy, please let us go. Lin Fan wasn't bothered with their words as he continued trying. Lin Fan was someone with the system. In his hands, there should be something different about the purification skill. Who knew what kind of surprise might pop out of it? Ding, purification failure. Not convinced. Lin Fan was not going to bow down in defeat just like this. Bloody hell, yours truly refuses to believe that he can't purify these guys. Since he had nothing on right now, he could just slowly play it out with them. He just had to see if he could push till it succeeded. Chapter 742, Cultivate the Universal Elixir. Chapter 742, Cultivate the Universal Elixir. Could this skill of purification really not even have that slightest chance of success here? Lin Fan was almost falling asleep on the couch right now. He did not know how many times he had used purification by now. However, if he were to roughly estimate, it would be 10,000 times at least. However, even though the effects were flashy each time, the impact was actually minuscule. Purify. The Buddha light wrapped around the entire place as all sorts of weird phenomenon occurred. The Buddha power of purification was flushing over the bodies of these three old men. However, they could only feel some slight tremors in their hearts. It was a feeling of breaking through the mold and being guided towards a fresh start in life. However, this feeling lasted momentarily before disappearing. The three old men exchanged glances with one another. They were used to this by now. Suddenly, they realized that this Lin Fan before them must be a lunatic. Obviously, his skill of purification was far from accomplished and yet he wanted to purify them with it. Wasn't this just a fool's dream? Given their 8 desolates united cultivation state, if they could be reformed by this weak purification power, they would have lived their lives for nothing. Little buddy, you're not going to be able to purify us. How about letting us go? That's right, little buddy, you've been at it for more than 10,000 times now. That resilience is worthy of admiration. I, the Saber Emperor, am willing to impart to you my ultimate moves. Me too. Elder Immortal Shu had thought for a long time, wondering how he had fainted. However, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't get it at all. But, given the situation right now, he had thrown in the towel. He realized that this little buddy before him had a mental issue. Lin Fan was pretty displeased at this point. His face then flushed up. Yours truly refuses to believe that there's no chance of the skill of purification working today. Purify, purify, ... Highs. The three old fogies sighed out in exasperation. After that, they let out a look of helplessness with nothing to look forward to. Since this was the case, then they could just let him purify as he wished. No-vel-b in .c ohm. The best would be for him to try purifying for a good 80 to 100 years. Perhaps the utmost being, Saint, might come searching for him and rescue them back by then. And then, they went through another 10,000 attempts at purification. Lin Fan was stopping in anguish right now. This doesn't make sense at all. Even crafting weapons have a slight possibility of creating a legendary weapon. This purification doesn't make any sense at all. You only gain experience points after a successful purification. But, if you don't, you get Jack's T experience points. That's right, there must be something wrong with this. At this moment, Lin Fan could not help but enter a deep state of thought as his brain churned really quickly while an endless amount of knowledge streamed into his mind. Suddenly, Lin Fan thought of a crucial point. He had once played a game called The Legend of Mere 2 Feet. Within it was a wizard who had a bewitching light skill, the equivalent of purification here. However, there was a prerequisite for it: the monsters had to be crippled. By then, the chances of them being converted would be significantly higher. Ayo, holy FCK, how could I have taken such a long time to understand such a simple logic? These three old fogies are no weaklings. And right now, they're at their peak status. No wonder there is no chance of the purification skill working at all. Lin Fan looked over at the three old fogies and his brows twitched in happiness. Now that he had thought things through, he was way more confident than ever. As for the three old fogies, they could tell that something was amiss right now. The gaze that Lin Fan cast at them had their hearts beating a little faster. What do you intend to do? The three of them felt a chilling sensation entering their hearts due to a bad feeling. He, nothing, Lin Fan chuckled out calmly. No matter what, he had to give it a shot. Lin Fan gripped his fist tightly. Don't worry. Yours truly will be gentle. Little buddy, we can talk things through. We're all living beings of the thousands of races. Elder Immortal Shu felt his heart thumping even faster at the sight of this guy before him. He. A sinister laughter came out of Lin Fan's mouth. The sound of it was extremely shivering. Saber Emperor, Spear Emperor. Seems like we're destined to die here today. I'm not willing to accept this. After hundreds and thousands of years, how can I possibly die here? Your emperor here is only one step away from attaining that eternal god state. The three old fellows clamored amongst themselves, venting the indignance in their hearts. At that instant, Lin Fan took action. Without any hesitation, he punched out with a calm aura as though there was no killing intent behind it. However, for the Saber Emperor and the Spear Emperor, this punch was ever so horrifying, as though they had just met with the devil himself. Blood-bursting fist of the North Star. Boom, wham, bam, thump. No, the tragic cries were relentless. By now, the Saber Emperor and the Spear Emperor were thoroughly fearful of this move. Haha, Spear Emperor, Saber Emperor, isn't this just a normal punch? Why are you so scared? Elder Immortal Shu asked indignantly. Why you? Looking at how fearless Elder Immortal Shu was, the Saber Emperor and the Spear Emperor had to give it to him. However, when they saw how his face turned pale right after, they sighed out deeply. They did not know what sort of skills this guy was actually cultivating. Why the hell were each of them sicker than the other? Blood-bursting fist of the North Star. As though he was possessed at this moment, Lin Fan's hands and legs moved non-stop as they rained down on the three old men. With the restriction of the mythical parasol tree, those three old men were rendered immobile. They could only accept the fists of Lin Fan like raindrops on their faces. Bam, bam, along with the passage of time, the auras of the three old men turned weaker. Lin Fan's eyes shone with a glint. All right. Seems like it's about time now. Purify. Ding. Purification failure. Ding. Purification failure. ... Yet another round of countless failures. However, this time around, Lin Fan did not lose faith. With the Buddhist light shining brightly, countless Buddhas surrounded the three old fogies while chanting out sutras. At this moment, Lin Fan's face was benevolent. It seemed as though he was the most compassionate man in the world right now. That Buddha heart of his shone down on the entire world. Purify, repent for your sins now and you shall be absolved of all crimes. Lin Fan's voice boomed out like thunder that revolved around the minds of the three old fogies endlessly. The malevolent faces of the three old fogies were starting to change gradually. They were turning merciful as that ominous intent that lay deep within their hearts was vanishing slowly as well. From the get-go, one could tell that these three old fogies were immensely strong. Even though they were always greeting people with smiles, one could tell that they were vicious and cruel beings who possessed an intense killing aura behind those smiling faces of theirs. Amitabha. Ding. Purification success. Ding. Experience points plus 100,000 feet. Ding. Congratulations. Purification has leveled up. ... At this moment, Lin Fan's herd leapt with joy. Indeed, it was as he had expected. Most people might have to train up this skill of purification slowly all the way down from the very bottom. However, for Lin Fan with his system, all sorts of possibilities laid in front of him. Otherwise, how was it befitting to call it the strongest system? Ding. Congratulations. Purification level 19. Suddenly, Lin Fan was starting to realize that the Buddha's light of purification within his body was getting more intense. In fact, it had even transformed into different figures of purifying Buddhas. Now that he had purified 3 divine celestial level 9 state beings in a row, Lin Fan had brought his skill of purification to this state. If he were to level it just one more time, it would be time for it to evolve. I've just discovered the most beautiful scene that awaits me in this world. The true path I should undertake is to follow by the side of my master. Elder Immortal Shu, Saber Emperor, and the Spear Emperor had let go of all attachments right now and were leaning towards Lin Fan with utmost conviction. Lin Fan grinned out and slammed down with his palm as a massive burst of aura exploded out. Instantly, it turned into a heaven-encompassing gigantic hand that pinched the 3 old fogies within it. With a tight squeeze, they exploded instantly. Their powers, paradise, law, universal elixir, essence spirit, and every other attainment was converted into energy of its purest form and spread out within the paradise. Ding. Congratulations on killing divine celestial level 9 state beings. ... Ding. Congratulations on leveling up. Ding. Cultivation state. Divine celestial level 8, universal elixir state. The 3 of you old fogies are worth Jack's tea to yours truly. It's more than enough to kill you guys and take the experience points that I require. Boom. All of a sudden, the energy within Lin Fan's body burst forth. Divine celestial level 8, universal elixir state. At this moment, Lin Fan had to cultivate the universal elixir. Chapter 743. This is really FCKED up. Chapter 743. This is really FCKED up. The paradise vibrated as the crystallized walls started pulsating, as though they were made of flesh and blood. Lin Fan's powers transformed into a colossal dragon that coiled itself around him. At this moment, Lin Fan bolted forth from his paradise as a massive surge of energy burst out of his body. Things would work when the conditions were right. At the moment when his experience points requirement was fulfilled, Lin Fan experienced a change in his body. Boom! The sky was filled with thunderclouds as lightning snakes squirmed around them. Within the paradise, the thousands and thousands of living beings bellowed out as the vast powers surged within Lin Fan's body. Our master. He's trying to cultivate the universal elixir. Everyone, come on out. The spirit of Bigra floated out as he looked at the situation outside the paradise right now. Pishu, Pishu, the big ancient demon bolted out from within his demon city. Within that thick and dense demonic chi stood a country of demons whose might threatened the world beneath. The Thunder Trainer King started changing Buddhist chants as the aura around him turned even more mystifying. However, at this moment when he pointed out with his finger, an infinite Buddhist light of immense brightness shone out. Skill of reform, Tao of purification, the 7 emotions and 6 sensory pleasures. Tao of the heart demon. Doomsday living spirit, Tao of calamity, destruction firmament, Tao of destruction. Rebirth of the blood sea, Tao of the blood sea. November LBJNN. At this moment, all sorts of skill spirits started howling out as well as an endless light beam shot forth from them. Within this beam was contained everything that had ever existed, as it was so strong that it could almost cleave the world apart. Lin Fan floated up into the void with a stern expression. Right now, the strange phenomenon was getting way too huge. However, the arrow was knocked on the bow right now. There was no way he could stop firing at this moment. Rock's breath. Devour the world. Lin Fan opened his mouth as a bright voice boomed out. The void started quaking furiously as countless black vortices appeared behind his back. A monstrous suction power formed vigorously as everything within the world started gravitating towards it, as though they no longer had any way to resist at all. Saint Spirit Chi from a radius of millions of miles started gathering over as well as they formed a gigantic dragon that descended down from the heavens. The disturbance is really way too phenomenal. Just how profound is my foundation? For most normal powerful beings, when they form their universal elixir, they would only take in the Saint Spirit Chi of a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles, that's all. Lin Fan had read intensively by now. This was especially the case after he had read through that review of cultivation gifted by Feng Qingzi. Now that the impact was this big, things were looking a little dangerous. In all directions in the lands far away, countless powerful beings could sense this phenomenal change that was happening. The heaven and earth are quaking and the Saint Spirit Chi in the air is all gone. Who in the world is cultivating their universal elixir? Tyrannical. This is really tyrannical, to think that he could suck dry every single last drop of Saint Spirit Chi within the void. This is practically a pillage. The faces of countless hidden powerful beings changed all of a sudden as they could sense this tremendous change in their hearts. Countless ancient race beings were moving out in armies as well after sensing the change that was going on right now. Guarded ground. Feng Qingzi was chatting merrily with the elderly figure. However, all of a sudden, his face changed as he looked over into the distance. This is bad. The lad's cultivating his universal elixir. However, why would there be such a huge disturbance? Isn't he just looking for death? Feng Qingzi did not dare to think more or hesitate as he immediately delved into the void in Lin Fan's direction. At this moment, Lin Fan's body was expanding rapidly as though it could explode at any moment. However, he suppressed it back and returned to normal once more. This Saint Spirit Chi here is really way too much. If not for the suppression from the system, I would have long exploded from it. Right now, Lin Fan still had no idea about the troubles that he might have to face from here on forth. However, he knew that now that he had started on cultivating the universal elixir, there was no way of stopping things at this point. Lin Fan realized that every single blood cell within his body had a single Saint Spirit dragon wrapping around them. Arg! Suddenly, Lin Fan's skin was tearing apart as blood started dripping out of every single pore of his body. In the blink of an eye, Lin Fan was turned into a bloodied man. FCK. Just how much more is there? Every single cell within my body is already at its max capacity. If this were to continue, I would really explode to death. Lin Fan's face changed as his powers started churning. The life force of the mythical parasol tree flushed through his body causing his cells to divide on their own. Within his inner world, a small little golden, sparkling universal elixir that was about the size of a soybean was revolving furiously, covered by a shroud of mist that resembled a galaxy. Master, we're coming. All of the many skill spirits were standing guard around this universal elixir. Yes, Lin Fan nodded his head. Rock's descent. Lin Fan's body jerked momentarily as a great amount of power ruptured forth. Instantly, an illusory figure of 1,000,000 feet tall rock stood behind Lin Fan. Universal elixir, cultivate. Lin Fan shouted out as the endless Saint Spirit Chi that had entered his body went berserk at this moment. The universal elixir within his inner world that had suddenly received such an astronomical amount of Saint Spirit Chi instantly turned stronger. All of the infinite Tao. Gathered together. All of the skill gods transformed themselves and fused into that universal elixir in a single moment. Each time a skill god entered it, a single thread would form on the surface of that golden shimmering universal elixir. This was the thread of the Tao. Right now, all the skills that Lin Fan had learned were already pretty strong to a certain extent. As such, they had already attained the Tao of the skills. For the universal elixir to be formed, everything was in place by now. The universal elixir was where the secrets of the universe lied. This soybean-sized universal elixir was getting stronger by the second. Gradually, it was as big as a longan. Next thing Lin Fan knew, it was as big as a pearl. Lin Fan's aura was getting monstrously huge as well as the void around him was long torn apart by him. The void currents that were leaking out were wrapping around his body like banners. Ha ha. Just at this moment, a howl like laughter broke out from the void as a gigantic golden arm reached out through all the void currents. It was as huge as the heavens, and the entire world seemed to be dimming down because of it. Lin Fan jerked his head up and felt his spirits rattled. Something big is going to happen. Just a single look over and Lin Fan knew that this gigantic arm wasn't something that he could defend against. Especially not now when he was at the most crucial moment of cultivating his universal elixir. Lin Fan's mind went to the heaven and earth smelt instantly. Seemed like he could only hide within that to tide through this at this moment. But in the blink of an eye, Lin Fan started wondering as well. If he were to hide within the heaven and earth smelt, then all his efforts that he had spent thus far cultivating this universal elixir would be wasted, wouldn't they? This is one hell of a FCKED up situation. At this moment, the boundless power was slamming out at his face. The sheer force of that power was causing Lin Fan's body to shiver unsteadily as the universal elixir within his body began to tremble as well. For someone to have a power of this level, it should definitely be an utmost being of the ancient race. Given Lin Fan's current powers, anything below an utmost being would just be FCKED by him anyhow. But, the momentum that was brought forth by this single palm was enough to have Lin Fan feeling jittery inside him. Therefore, this must definitely be an utmost being. FCKU, it's not like yours truly has murdered your entire family or something. Aren't I just cultivating a universal elixir here? Why do you have to come at me like this? Lin Fan cussed in his heart. To think that you would grow to such an extent. Since this is the case, you must definitely not be allowed to stay alive. The booming voice had a magnitude similar to mountains as it pummeled down towards Lin Fan. Under the might of this single palm, even the shape of the world was starting to change. Ever since Lin Fan had entered the ancient saint world, he had been extremely audacious, and had slain countless ancient race beings. Now that the phenomenon of him cultivating his universal elixir was this great, it was sensed by an utmost being instantly who was bent on killing him. Chapter 744, Impending Danger. Chapter 744, Impending Danger. Saint, how about we hold this off for a little bit? You let me finish cultivating my universal elixir first, then we go for a good fight later on, Lin Fan was thoroughly exasperated right now. This was the most critical moment right now. This was practically taking away his life. No matter what Lin Fan said, Saint neither bothered nor replied. He just increased the strength within that palm of his. If this palm were to plummet down, given Lin Fan's current situation, he would most likely die with a single hit. FCK, I gave you some face, but you didn't take it. You had better pray that yours truly doesn't get a chance to come back. Otherwise, I'll definitely whack you into the sky. Lin Fan bellowed out, hurry up, faster, please. The speed at which the universal elixir was churning increased rapidly. However, if Lin Fan did not come up with a plan soon, not only would his universal elixir not be completed, he might not even get to keep his life. The pressure was getting intense as the sweat on Lin Fan's forehead dripped down in huge beads. Did he really have to stop the cultivation of his universal elixir right now and just retreat into his heaven and earth smelt? Lin Fan was hesitant right now. He wasn't willing to accept defeat if it came like this. Ever since he had ascended into this world, everything had been smooth sailing for him. Since when had he encountered a situation like this? Lin Fan knew that if he were to successfully cultivate the universal elixir, there would not be many powerful beings in this world who would be able to take his life from then on. Saint, I'll give it to you this time around. But, mark my words. One day, yours truly is going to have you stomped under my feet. Lin Fan bellowed out, ready to stop everything right now. He did not know what the consequences of him doing so would be. But, he knew that if he didn't do so, he might very well just lose his life right here. Saint, are you really going to attack someone under this old man? Just at this moment, a figure tore through the void and appeared right before Lin Fan. Revered Master. Looking at who it was that had appeared, Lin Fan's heart leapt with joy. That rock that was pressing down on his heart right now was relieved instantly. With this old man around, his life would be safe for sure. Disciple, just continue cultivating. Your revered master shall handle everything here. Feng Qingzi raised his hand and, the palm of the utmost being saint dissipated instantly. Saint, this is the disciple of this old man here. Are you trying to wage a war with us? Feng Qingzi glared at Saint with a hardened tone that was unfazed by the pressure. Seeing the reverberations caused by his disciple's cultivation of the universal elixir, Feng Qingzi was startled as well. This sort of a phenomenon was practically heaven-defying. To think that the saint's spirit chi in a radius of 1,000,000 miles would be sucked dry instantly. Even a powerful being of divine celestial level 10, eternal God state might not be able to achieve something like this. When Feng Qingzi caught sight of the threads that were on the surface of his disciple's universal elixir, he was even more astonished. To think that his disciple would be able to push these many skills up to the state of Tao. Even if it were a supreme genius of this world, they might not be able to achieve the same feat. Just this point alone and Feng Qingzi knew that he must keep this lad alive, no matter what. The reason for the guarded ground's existence was to retain seeds of change, so that they could continue fighting against the ancient race. As for Feng Qingzi, Lin Fan was his hope. Feng Qingzi, are you trying to stop your utmost here? Utmost being saint blasted out. Today, he had the heart to kill Lin Fan right here. Now that the gleaming blood lord had seemingly evaporated from the world, Saint knew that it must have been done by this human here. This old man has no intentions of stopping you. However, he is the disciple of this old man. If you want to cause harm to him, this old man wouldn't mind going for a good round with you. Feng Qingzi's expression was stern. Even though the outcome of him going against the utmost being was a 50-50 match, the calamity that would ensue from it was definitely unimaginable. As such, unless there was a dire need to do so, Feng Qingzi was not willing to exchange blows with the utmost being. Many powerful beings had gathered from all directions right now. However, when they caught sight of the utmost being, the colors drained from their faces. Some of them ran away instantly in order to safeguard their lives. That's the utmost being saint. And that old man there, he seems to be the guardian of the guarded ground. Then, who is that young man over there? To think that he would create such a phenomenon through cultivating his universal elixir. This is unimaginable. Hurry up and leave. If they were to fight, we'd definitely suffer from the collateral damage. November LBJNN. Now that Feng Qingzi was around, Lin Fan was able to focus every bit of his attention on cultivating his universal elixir. However, there was something that was bugging him still. What was up with the system this time around? Back in the past, breaking through states was something that happened instantaneously. Why did he have to cultivate the universal elixir on his own right now? Could it be that the foundation of his powers was way too profound, that even the system was unable to cultivate it for him instantly? Hurry up, I've got to hurry it up. Even Lin Fan was getting anxious at this moment right now. That glimmering universal elixir floated up into the sky gently as a series of tremendous aura burst forth from it. This aura was incredibly strong. Even the utmost being saint frowned on sensing it, showing his surprise towards this. This living being must be slain. If I were to let him grow, he might be another being like the Fire-Water Empress. The utmost being saint's mind was fluttering as he secretly made his resolve. The thought of the Fire-Water Empress was one that was troubling for the ancient race. That was a female empress who had reincarnated countless times, an existence that had grown from an ant-like being to one that caused even the ancient race to feel shivers over. If there were a second being just like her, then it would be a calamity for the ancient race. Feng Qingzi, you are the guardian of the guarded ground. However, right now, you're overstepping your boundaries. Do you really think the ancient race is one you can just bully over? Fine then, today, it's time to see if you've improved over the past thousands of years. The moment the utmost being saint struck, the void currents in all directions began to culminate. Instantly, a long spear was formed from them. This spear was filled with a strong killing intent. In fact, there was even a weapon spirit that was howling within. With just the flip of his palm, a lower-graded utmost treasure was formed. A method as such was enough for everyone to feel chills down their spines. Feng Qingzi did not dare to be careless as well. Even though he was a powerful being who had obtained the eternal God seat, this utmost being saint here was no weaker than him. In fact, if one were to consider their base foundations, the utmost being saint would even have an edge over Feng Qingzi. Feng Qingzi's white robes started fluttering without any wind as a half-mooned golden chakram revolved behind his back. The moment this half-mooned golden chakram appeared, day and night exchanged places as the sky turned into a dark one, with stars all over. An endless power of starlight shone down on this half-mooned golden chakram as it emanated out with a chilling glow. Feng Qingzi, that half-mooned golden chakram is something that belongs to the ancient race. It's a pity that there was a traitor within the ancient race who gave that to you. But, it doesn't matter. Today, your utmost being is going to take it back from you. The utmost being saint scoffed coldly as he drew out 2 frosty streaks of light from his eyes. In a jiffy, he tore through the void and appeared before Feng Qingzi. For a powerful being of that level, any simple move made by them could practically shake the entire world and devastate the universe. Feng Qingzi wasn't shaken at all as his long white hair danced in the sky. That long white beard of his rose up and penetrated into the void, encompassing the sky around them instantly. At this moment, Lin Fan's attention was fully engrossed in cultivating his universal elixir, so he did not pay much attention to everything happening around him. However, he knew that the fight between that old man and the utmost being saint must be really intense. Right now, the entire ancient saint world was feeling the tremors. All the powerful beings could sense 2 monstrous forces opposing each other and spreading out slowly within the whole ancient saint world. It was rare for something as such to happen within the ancient saint world after all. They did not know what was happening right now. Universal elixir, unbridled and limitless. Suddenly, Lin Fan shouted out, causing a series of gigantic cyclones to form around him. These cyclones were like dragons that sucked in every single bit of saint spirit chi around them. The universal elixir that was glimmering within his inner world was now more luminous than ever. It was bedazzling like the days and nights of the universe, bringing with it an unrivaled might. Tao cultivated. Universal elixir completed. Suddenly, Lin Fan bellowed out as his entire body took on a shade of gold, as though a heavenly god had just descended down. PSHEW. Ant-like living being, die for your utmost being here. In 1/1000th of a second, the void behind Lin Fan quaked intensely, as a gigantic hand tore through the void and grabbed out at him. Lin Fan felt his heart sink down as a chilling feeling shot down his entire spine. A never-before feeling of impending doom surged up into his mind. The speed of this gigantic hand was way too fast. As though it had sealed the time of the surrounding space, there was no chance for anyone to retaliate at all. Pierce. Chapter 745. Who's afraid of whom? Let's harm one another then. Chapter 745. Who's afraid of whom? Let's harm one another then. Lin Fan's incredibly tough body was pierced by that gigantic hand. Ding. Eternal God body experience points plus 1 million. By now, Lin Fan was no longer concerned about the notification from the system. The thing that Lin Fan was frightful of right now was the fact that the gigantic hand had not only pierced through his body, it had even extended itself into his inner world. Prevent. I've got to prevent this guy from succeeding. All the skills burst forth as the living beings within the paradise hollered out. HMPH. You wanna stop your utmost here? You must be dreaming. Under a single slap, every single bit of resistance was futile as the palm came before the face of the universal elixir. You want to cultivate the universal elixir before me? That's a fool's dream. That gigantic arm grabbed hold of the universal elixir within it. No matter how hard the universal elixir struggled, it was all useless. Not good. Feng Qingzi, who was engaged in battle with the utmost being saint right now, suddenly took a change of expression when he noticed what was going on with Lin Fan right now. To think that Cruel would appear here as well. Haha, Feng Qingzi, your disciple is as good as wasted right now. The universal elixir is already in the hands of Cruel right now. Do you think that you've got the capabilities of protecting him still? The utmost being saint laughed out wildly. You've planned this from the very beginning. Feng Qingzi's eyes were reddened with rage as he shouted out. HMPH. Now that another living being with an unlimited potential has appeared in the midst of the thousands of races, your utmost here would naturally not allow him to continue growing as such. Now that the outcome is already determined, are you still intent on dueling all the way through? The eyes of Saint were extremely vicious right now. Feng Qingzi's breathing was getting heavier right now. To think that the utmost being Cruel would cross the boundaries to head over here. This was something he hadn't expected at all. Cruel, you had better put down that universal elixir for this old man here. How could Feng Qingzi allow Lin Fan to be crippled here like this? If he were to lose the universal elixir, all of his efforts from before would have been for naught. No matter how high Lin Fan's potential was, he would turn into a handicapped person from that point on and truly turn into an ant-like existence forever. Feng Qingzi, your opponent is me. Utmost Being Saint instantly blocked the path forward. Cruel, destroy his universal elixir and kill that ant. Cruel was laughing out maniacally right now as the hatred within his heart was seeping out. This ant-like living being had killed countless of his underlings, and had caused him to bow his head down in shame in front of the other utmost beings. For Cruel, that was an intolerable humiliation he had to go through. Ant, your death has arrived. From the very day you offended your utmost being here, your fate has already been determined. Utmost Being Cruel laughed out in a frenzy. With a jerk, he pulled out his palm from within Lin Fan's body. Cruel, your happiness has arrived way too early. Lin Fan's face was entirely pale right now as he grabbed onto Cruel's hand. Yours truly is not someone you can bully this easily. Heaven and earth smelt. Boom. All of a sudden, the entire world trembled as the heaven and earth smelt appeared in the sky all of a sudden. That vicissitude aura flushed through the entire world. What's that? How could the aura of it be this strong? When the utmost being saint caught sight of that heaven and earth smelt, his face changed into one of disbelief. Feng Qingzi was slightly startled as well due to the heaven and earth smelt. From the heaven and earth smelt, he could sense an extremely destructive aura, as though everything in the world would have to bow down to its might. This wasn't even an utmost treasure. However, the aura was way stronger than an utmost treasure. What's this shit? Cruel's arm was still within Lin Fan's body right now. When he caught sight of this humongous object, he froze up as well. This is a sh*t that will take your life. Lin Fan was close to scolding his mother by now. These guys were giving him no chance at all. All yours truly was trying to do was to cultivate out a universal elixir, wasn't it? Did they have to FCK up yours truly like that? A single utmost being wasn't enough that they had to bloody sneak one more in. Enough was enough. Now that the universal elixir was in the hands of Cruel, it would be a fool's dream if Lin Fan thought that he could break free of his grip. But at the same time, it was an even bigger dream if Cruel thought that he could just steal yours truly's universal elixir like that. Cruel had not expected things to turn out like this. From the unknowns, he could sense an ominous feeling surging up his mind, warning him of danger. He wanted to retreat, but it was all too late. Get in here. The heaven and earth smelt could refine anything in this world. And, this was Lin Fan's only method of destroying everything indiscriminately. So what if it were an utmost being of the ancient race? In the face of the heaven and earth smelt, everything must be destroyed equally. In the blink of an eye, the utmost being Cruel and Lin Fan disappeared from where they were. Where is this? The utmost being Cruel looked at everything around him as his face took a huge turn into one of disbelief. Cruel, I'm giving you one last chance to let go of yours truly's universal elixir. Lin Fan was glaring the utmost being Cruel in the face right now. There was only the distance of an arm between them. Ant, you've got to be dreaming. Now that Cruel was holding on to Lin Fan's universal elixir with a death grip, there was naturally no way he was going to let go of it. Do you think that you can rest easy just by trapping your utmost being in here? Wait till your utmost being kills you. You're not going to get the chance to. Lin Fan did not wait for Cruel to continue with his crap as he started smelting instantly. N-O-V-E in .c ohm. All of a sudden, horrifying flames blazed within the heaven and earth smelt. Arg-h-h-h-h-h-h-h-h-h-h-h-h. Snakes of fire coiled around everywhere. Under the might of the smelt, even Lin Fan could not withstand it despite his current physical body state. Ding. Eternal God body experience points plus 100,000. ... Two tragic cries rang out together. Cruel could only feel his consciousness, in fact, his entire soul enduring an endless torment that was so painful that he could literally die now. This feeling was bringing forth fear towards Cruel. I'll give you one last chance. Are you going to let go or not? If you do, I'll let you out. Otherwise, you'll just have to die here. Lin Fan's skin was tearing apart as he sweated profusely. Even a single breath of smelting within this place was more than enough for Lin Fan to endure. This was no ordinary smelt. Not only was it unbearable for one's body, even one's soul and consciousness would undergo an equal amount of torment. This wasn't something that any ordinary beings could handle at all. Ant, let go of me, Cruel screamed out. There was a hint of fear hidden deep within his eyes. Even though he was the weakest of the 8 utmost beings, he was still an eternal God state being who had obtained an eternal God seat no matter what. He wasn't someone who could be compared to those pseudo-eternal God state beings. But, that flame just now disregarded all his powers entirely and was incinerating his body directly. That was something extremely horrific for Cruel. You let go. Lin Fan's breathing was heavy. In order to let Cruel know of his strength, he had purposely increased the power of smelting within this place to a certain degree. And, you have no rights to speak to me about terms. I'll just have to see how long more you can endure. Cruel blasted out. I am one of the utmost beings of the ancient race. How can someone like you compare to me? You're belittling me. How dare you try to bargain with me when yours truly would even dare to torment himself? Forget it. Today, whoever begs for mercy shall be a dog then. Lin Fan was angered right now. He knew that Cruel was a tough nut to crack. But, if that were the only case, he was not going to be the first to bow down either. Smelt frantically. Go, Lin Fan bellowed out. Instantly, an even scarier power of refinement burst forth. Arg hhhhhhhhhhhh. The two screams of pain like that of pigs being slaughtered rang out together within the heaven and earth smelt. This was a torment of the deepest level, one in which there was no way to fight back at all. This was a sin of its own. Chapter 746, Torment one another. We're both resolute. Chapter 746, Torment one another. We're both resolute. So, are you letting go or not? After being smelted for a while, both Lin Fan and the utmost being Cruel could be considered to be on an even ground right now. Losing their limbs and legs would already be considered to be a good state in the current situation. Your utmost being is not going to let go. Right now, the utmost being Cruel was sweating profusely, with bead-like drops of perspiration dripping down from his forehead with a splash. He was almost on the breaking point from all that pain. But, if this were the only case, it still wasn't enough for him to loosen his grip on the universal elixir. Come at me if you've got the guts. What sort of pain has your utmost not endured? You think that you can have your utmost bowing down in defeat over such a pain? Then, you've got to be looking down on me. The gaze of the utmost being Cruel was harsh right now, filled with a frenzy. That hand of his which was gripping onto Lin Fan's universal elixir was still shut tightly, with no intentions of letting up at all. Lin Fan was enduring an urge to cry right now. All of these ancient race beings were some bloody sickos. They were all lunatics, and, the utmost beings were practically the machine guns of the lunatics. He was evidently on the point of being unable to endure it, yet he was still talking tough. If it were any normal sane man, they would have been scared pissing just looking at the crazed look of Cruel. However, even if that were the case, so what? Lin Fan wasn't going to be afraid of that. Since he was going to be tough, so was Lin Fan. If he wanted a competition of who was tougher, then he better come at it with everything. Lin Fan did not say anything anymore as the heaven and earth smelt vibrated once more. VRRRR. VRRRR. The fiery flames were blazing as they brought forth torment from outside all the way in. Even if it were the toughest treasure in this entire world, it would have been smelted into ashes by now. Cruel, neither of us would need to speak anymore today. At the very most, we can both just die together. I'll just have to see how much more you can endure. Arg hhhhhhhhhhhhh. Lin Fan and Cruel glared at one another. Under this immense suffering, both of them were knocked kneeling on the ground. Their bodies were like clay slurries at this moment that were corroding non-stop. The inner world and foundation of Cruel was starting to quake as well. Even those uncountable years of cultivation gained through hard work couldn't withstand this power of refinement here right now. Just what sort of power is this? Why can't I endure it even with my ancient body as an utmost being of the ancient race? The heart of the utmost being Cruel was frightened right now. However, when he looked at the state of Lin Fan right now, he could not help but grit his teeth as well. He refused to believe that a puny human would be able to endure to such an extent. Ding. Eternal God Body Experience Points plus 100,000. Ding. Congratulations on Eternal God Body leveling up. Level 7. FCK. My physical body state did not level up at all. Damn it. Lin Fan's heart was about to break down right now. However, in front of Cruel, he had to put on a strong front. He must not cower at all. Right now, his physical body state was that of a Divine Celestial Level 8 state. If he were to level up, it would be Divine Celestial Level 9 state. And, once he got to a Divine Celestial Level 9 state, how far could he possibly be from a Divine Celestial Level 10 state? By that time, who else in this world would be able to kill your daddy? So what if it were an utmost being who had obtained an eternal God seat? By then, your daddy could stand there and have them whack him for thousands and thousands of years, and even then, they might not be able to kill your daddy. FCK. Come on then, whoever bows down is a dog. Lin Fan was enraged at this moment. Wasn't it just to be smelted? One might as well bring it on. The fresh blood within his body rumbled furiously as his body temperature reached a frightening degree. Under this temperature, just a single touch would be enough to burn anyone to death, let alone having it boil within his body. Heavens will utmost being, bestow and bless my ancient body. The utmost being Cruel shouted out as a mystifying energy burst forth from his body and gathered above his head, before shooting out towards the void. However, all of a sudden, Cruel's face changed as he realized in horror that the energy could not penetrate through these walls. November LBJNN. Cruel, stop wasting your efforts. In this place, I am both the heaven and earth. This is isolated from the outside world. You were hoping for the heavens will to bless you. That's a fool's dream. The ancient race were heavily blessed, as though they were the very son of the heavens will itself. If an utmost being were to receive the blessings from the heavens will, the power that would erupt forth would be astoundingly horrifying. However, if he thought that he could receive the blessings from within this heaven and earth smelt, he would undoubtedly be dreaming. The utmost being Cruel glared at Lin Fan and opened his mouth in rage. Instantly, it transformed into a gigantic mouth that could devour the world. I'm going to eat you up. Dream on, Lin Fan bellowed out as the power of refinement within the heaven and earth smelt shot up once more. Arg hhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhh. Ding, eternal God body experience points plus 120,000. The utmost being Cruel howled out as his face turned ever more menacing. But, Lin Fan was nowhere better at this moment. Bam, 1/3 of their bodies were destroyed at this point. Lin Fan endured this limitless and endless pain. The only bit of sanity left within his mind seemed as though it was about to collapse. This feeling had Lin Fan doubting his life entirely. Mad, he had really gone mad. Lin Fan's mental state was about to crumble down as his entire person started going insane. Smelt us entirely. Lin Fan's eyes were bloodshot red as his expression turned ever more venomous. With the heaven and earth smelt, it would be an extremely easy task for him to raise his physical body state to a peak state. However, the equivalent suffering from that exchange was endless and boundless. That was a pain that could cause one to entirely lose their sanity. With the existence of the system, Lin Fan believed that he would be able to become a powerful being who could rule over the entire universe through his hard work one fine day. Therefore, unless there was really no other choice for him, Lin Fan would definitely not depend on the heaven and earth smelt to raise his physical body state. That was because every single time he was smelted, it was a world of torment for him. Even the type of devastating pain that could be caused by the True Origin's crushing kick was not even 1 out of 10,000 compared to the power of refinement. Cruel, this is something that you've forced me to do. Are you going to let go? Lin Fan screamed out, but his heart was extremely pained. If this guy before him weren't an utmost being of the ancient race, he would have been smelted long before him. But, the guy before him was an utmost being. Lin Fan had made a rough calculation. Given the current physical body state of the utmost being Cruel, if he wanted to kill off the other party, the only way was to die off with him. Ha ha ha, Cruel laughed out sinisterly, human. Your utmost knows that you're starting to feel fear. But, your utmost here isn't afraid of death. For countless of thousands of years, your utmost has been through all sorts of pains and tortures. Yet, I've never once bowed down. And yet, someone like you thinks that he can get your utmost to bow down. You aren't qualified just yet. Even if I have to die, your utmost will let you die with an insufferable pain. The universal elixir is the root of your belonging. I'll have you disappear into nothingness where your consciousness will not even get a chance at reincarnate. The utmost being Cruel laughed out wildly. This was a crazed laughter. I am Cruel, an utmost being of the ancient race, a thousands of years old immortal being that reigns over all the living beings in this world. I have feared nothing in my entire life. You ought to be proud of yourself for being able to force your utmost to such a state. F***CKU. Still bragging before me at this point. F***CKING smelt him. Lin Fan could not endure it anymore. To think that this utmost being Cruel would still think of flaunting himself before Lin Fan in such an insane manner. This was something that Lin Fan could not tolerate at all. And furthermore, he had even used a common phrase that Lin Fan loved to use while flaunting. Arg hhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhh. Before the utmost being Cruel could even finish his words, Lin Fan had raised the refinement once more. A series of pig-slaughtering sounds rang out through the smelt, capable of bringing goosebumps to anyone who could have heard them. Cruel grit his teeth harshly and was filled with immense bitterness. When he saw that crazed expression on the face of that human, he felt a deep part of his heart losing a portion of his courage. While this was an infinitesimal feeling, this single seed of doubt was enough to crush Cruel. He was an utmost being. How could he feel something such as fear? Cruel, you are an utmost being of the ancient race while I am a lone man with nothing to lose. The fact that I can have an utmost being such as yourself accompany me to death is more than enough. However, everything you possess shall be gifted out to everyone else. All the other utmost beings would also feel spurned at your death in the hands of yours truly as well. Lin Fan burst out laughing. Actually, Lin Fan was really giving in right now as he acknowledged defeat in his heart. This was really pushing him to his limits with no chance at all. Now that he had already pushed this far, the outcome of him continuing to push forth was obvious. He would have to die. It didn't matter if he had the system. Even the system couldn't allow him to reincarnate for no reason. However, he had already said it out, whoever bowed first would be a dog. Lin Fan didn't want to be a dog man. Since that was the case, they could only choose to continue hurting one another. Chapter 747, The Only Two Powerful Beings of the Human Race. Chapter 747, The Only Two Powerful Beings of the Human Race. Everything that Lin Fan had just said was being knocked hard into the head of the utmost being Cruel. Just as Lin Fan had said, even if he were to die, there would be a new utmost being of the ancient race to take over from him. Everything that he possessed would be gifted to others. At the same time, he would be mocked by the other utmost beings. This wasn't something that Cruel could endure. He had not expected to have to pay with his life by coming here to slaughter this guy this time around. And, within this mystifying treasure, even the heavens could not be transmitted in. What else could he do? Admit defeat. The thought did cross his mind. However, as an utmost being of the ancient race, how could he admit defeat? As such, the utmost being Cruel was still waiting. Since this was the case, he could only continue to wait this out all the way. To wait till someone acknowledged defeat first. The utmost being Cruel had wanted to slaughter Lin Fan. Therefore, when he saw that Lin Fan had stepped into the territory of Saint, he was initially overwhelmed with joy. However, now that he was thinking about it, if he were to pay with his life for killing this brat right here, it would totally not be worth it at all. He should hand the headache over to Saint instead. At the same time, this kid could wreak havoc in Saint's territory. Human, you admit defeat and let me out. Then I'll let go of your universal elixir. The utmost being Cruel said. Impossible. Yours truly has never lost in my entire life. Even if someone has to admit defeat, it should be you. Lin Fan truly wanted to admit defeat in his heart. However, he clenched down on his teeth and refused to bow down no matter what. He had already obtained an answer right now. The inner heart of the utmost being Cruel had already started cowering. As long as this thought was something he was mulling over, things would be easy from here on. So long as they could go through a few more rounds of smelting, the utmost being Cruel would be sure to bow down. By then, after his universal elixir were to return to its rightful place, he would be able to come up with all sorts of plans against this guy. HMPH. You've got to be dreaming if you want your utmost here to acknowledge defeat. The utmost being Cruel replied harshly. Alright, since that's the case, let us continue then. Yours truly will just have to see how long more you can hold on for. Lin Fan set his resolve. Now that things had come to this, he might as well just bear with it till the end. Boom, the power of refinement struck out once more. The eyes of both Lin Fan and Cruel shone with a frightful look. However, the expression on their faces were equally unfazed. This sort of torment is nothing. The utmost being Cruel declared sternly. Hooey hooey, Lin Fan sniggered out, expressing his disdain. With this power of refinement that tore at their very spirits, the fact that these two could still face it like this showed the hardened wills of both of them, which was worth admiring. Arg. ... Instantly, that pig slaughtering sound rang out once more. This time around, the power of refinement was way stronger than before. Ding. Eternal God Body Experience Points plus 150,000. November LBJNN. Lin Fan had long forgotten how many times the notifications from the system had rung out by now. Under this power of refinement, Lin Fan was not the only one yelling out in pain. All the living beings within his paradise were on the brink of breaking down as well. The big ancient demon that was within the demon city howled out continuously as an endless amount of demonic powers burst forth. However, under this power of refinement, it was destroyed instantly. The Thunder Trainer King shone with a bright golden shade and had a composed expression. However, his body was as broken as it could be while he was still cultivating that skill of purification. Outside, the battle between Feng Qingzi and the utmost being Saint had long caused the entire world to practically topple over. When two powerful beings fought, even if it were just a single breath, it would be enough to destroy a single part of the entire world. Feng Qingzi, You don't have to dream of leaving alive today as well. It's long due for one of the 4 great guarded grounds to disappear by now. Brandishing his spear, the utmost being saint disintegrated Feng Qingzi's attack instantly. And you think that you alone would have the capabilities to do so, saint? Feng Qingzi no longer knew what was happening to Lin Fan right now. What was going on within that smelt? No matter how powerful he was, he could not peer through the secrets behind it at all. Each time he wanted to use his consciousness to check out the insides, he would find himself being blocked by a mysterious barrier of energy. This caused Feng Qingzi to be startled. Given his current powers, even if it were an utmost treasure, he would be able to check through it. But to think that he couldn't peer into this smelt, that was something that was bugging Feng Qingzi in his mind. Well, what if you were to add me in? At this moment, the void was sliced apart by a sharp glow of light as though it was a wave. From within, an ancient race being walked out briskly. Every single step he took caused the powers of the earth to go berserk with it. When Feng Qingzi caught sight of who had arrived, his face changed. Fault. How about now, Feng Qingzi? Do you think that you can still hold out if you were to count me in? At this moment, a third utmost being of the had arrived. Out of the 8 utmost beings of the ancient race, if one were to include Cruel, there would be 3 utmost beings gathered at this place right now. Even if Feng Qingzi were extremely confident towards his own capabilities, he could not help but tense up at this moment. A single glance over and one could tell that the utmost being Fault had a body as vast as a thousands of feet tall mountain. As he approached closer, his body began shrinking down, until it eventually looked the same as everyone else. However, that explosive body of his still retained that boundless amount of power that it had. Feng Qingzi, do you really think that you can hold down a part of the world just with your position as a guardian? The other 3 guarded grounds are like fishes in a pond that are just living by sneakily and lowly after being suppressed by our ancient race. If not for the fact that Cruel is too weak, do you think that those living beings that are guarded by you would be able to move around with such freedom in this place? The face of the utmost being Fault was calm as he commented indifferently. However, there was an authoritative tone within that voice, as though a single word was enough for him to kill off all the living beings. Fault, I'm sure you can understand now how much of a burden Cruel is. If not for him, how could this old man here be so brazen right now? The utmost being saint laughed out icily. With the 8 utmost beings of the ancient race, other than the place where Feng Qingzi's guarded ground was, all the other places were oppressed harshly. It was totally unlike this guarded ground, where the living beings were free enough to roam about easily. It's inevitable that the utmost being who rose up later on would be that bit weaker. But, it doesn't matter. Not long after, the infinite worlds will open up. By then, the heavens will awaken. From then forth, all the infinite worlds shall quiver and serve under the might of the ancient race. Feng Qingzi, this guarded ground that you guys are guarding over is only a place which the heavens will had arranged for you guys to live in. Did you really think that a miracle could happen? The utmost being Fault's mouth smirked out. In their eyes, the beings of the thousands of races were only beasts that were reared in enclosed areas. Even though some of these beasts might be fiercer than others, the only outcome awaiting them was nothing but death. A bunch of crap, Feng Qingzi blared out. Ha ha, the utmost being Fault chuckled out. However, he did not say anything more and raised his head and looked into the depths of the void. Those deep eyes of his seemed to be able to pierce through the world as though all living beings were revealed before them. Female Empress, Namo Saint Emperor. I guess it's about time for you guys to come out as well. Why, does your utmost being here have to invite you guys out personally? The void rippled out as a pair of tender hands tore it apart. An unparalleled and dignified figure strode out from the void briskly. On the other side of the void, Namo Saint Emperor tore through another part of the void with a stern expression. Ha ha, to think that there would be 2 beings of the human race who would appear within the ancient saint world. Unless, you guys are here for that human, Thousands of years ago, there were countless of beings of the human race within the ancient saint world. However, there was something that caused the 8 utmost beings to feel restless in their hearts. The human race did not have a mighty body like that of the Vajra race. They did not have the potential of the other races either. Neither did they have any special bloodline to them. Yet, the amount of potential that burst forth from them was something that left the utmost beings feeling really uneasy. As such, the 8 utmost beings of the ancient race joined hands to massacre the entire human race. After they slaughtered the entire human race, the utmost being Ancient One was scammed and killed by some powerful beings of the human race. At the same time, they set up the ascension barrier within the ancient saint world. From then on, there were only 2 beings of the human race left within the ancient saint world. They were the Namo Saint Emperor and the female Empress. However, both of them were extremely well hidden, and had never appeared within the world at all. The utmost beings of the ancient race knew that a mere two human beings could not possibly cause any huge ruckus. Therefore, they weren't bothered by it at all. Highs. The female Empress sighed. Ever since Lin Fan had ascended from the ancient saint world, she had been watching over him. However, to the shock of the female Empress, even she could not figure out what he was up to at times despite her strength. And right now, this human had grown to such an extent in the short span of a mere 4 years. He was now an existence that required the personal appearance of an utmost being in order to stop him. This was something the female Empress could have never imagined. Naturally, I'm here for him. Even though your emperor here has a grudge against him, your emperor is here to guard over him today. The Namo Saint Emperor spoke up. Back in the lower world, everything that Lin Fan did had long caused the Namo Saint Emperor to burn with rage in his heart. He could not bear to squish this person to death instantly. Ever since Lin Fan ascended into the ancient saint world, the Namo Saint Emperor could have easily killed him without any effort at all. However, he didn't. He wanted to see just what sort of a potential this man possessed. If he were useless, the Namo Saint Emperor was prepared to just strike out and kill this person entirely to vent the frustrations in his heart. However, with the way this lad was growing right now, the Namo Saint Emperor would not kill him no matter how infuriated he was. After all, this was the future of the human race here. Chapter 748, Let Us Hug. Chapter 748, Let Us Hug. Cruel, you see that now? Do you see how this saint and that fault or whatnot are humiliating you? Saint is the worst, to be honest. To think that he would say something such as you being a burden. How can you endure that? Lin Fan pointed out to the situation outside the heaven and earth smelt. Highs. You know, now that I'm hearing it, even I am finding it hard to tolerate it. If you were to die just like this, not only would you gain nothing at all, you would be ridiculed like this forever. I'm feeling really pitiful for you right now, honestly. That is one place in history I wouldn't want anyone to be in. Shut up. Within the heaven and earth smelt, Cruel was looking at everything that was happening outside through the walls of the smelt. Every single word said by Saint was transmitted into his ears. For Cruel, this was an insufferable shame. As for Lin Fan, he was a little startled right now. The face of that female empress was one that he would never ever forget. As for the other man, the one named Namo Saint Emperor. When Lin Fan thought of him, he felt his nuts feeling a little crushed. Back when they were in the lower world, these two fellas had been thoroughly humiliated by him. The sight of it all was unbearable to watch. A single strain of the female empress's consciousness had her chest expanded to a state where they were almost exploding with Lin Fan's black tiger steel's heart. As for that beautiful, ravishing face of hers, it was walloped into the state of a pig's. But, Lin Fan of now was a man who knew how to treasure and cherish a woman. He could not understand how he could have done what he had in the past. But, none of that mattered anymore. After all, the female empress had played him out once as well. Towards this Namo Saint Emperor, Lin Fan had always thought that he was an enemy. But now that he looked back, he might have overthought things. After all, back when he had just ascended into the ancient saint world, this man did not come seeking him out right away to kill him. By the looks of it, he couldn't have been too angry after all. Forget it, let bygones be bygones then. Towards how the situation outside was progressing, Lin Fan did not want to know too much about it for now. After all, the biggest issue before him right now was Cruel. If this Cruel weren't going to let go of his universal elixir, everything would be for naught. Cruel, even though we're both enemies, I've got to say that I, Lin Fan, have truly never respected any ancient race beings. But you've got my respect right now. Let go of your hand, and I'll escort you out. Let's pinky promise this. Once we're out, we'll do what each of us wants to do from then on. What do you think about that? Lin Fan's voice was gentle right now. This was a discussion as well as a negotiation. Given the current situation, if they were to just endure it on both sides, neither side would gain from it. Cruel looked at Lin Fan. You send me out first. Once I'm outside, I'll let go. The moment Lin Fan heard this, he was exasperated. Cruel, we've been fighting for so long now. Can't we just have some mutual trust between us? It's just as you've said. You should trust me, Cruel replied. N-O-V-E in .c ohm. As far as Cruel was concerned, he would definitely crush this universal elixir once they got outside. Initially, Cruel had wanted to endure it to the bitter end with Lin Fan. He didn't even have any fear towards death at all. However, the words of Saint were causing Cruel to feel really resentful within. If he were to die just like this, everything that had belonged to him would belong to someone else for free. Highs, to be honest, you're just like me. We're both pitiful beings. Back in the lower world, I was a lonely orphan with no relatives since I was young. In fact, I didn't even have a single friend. I even had to fight with a dog for a meal back when I was a kid. For the sake of living on, God knows how many times I've been ridiculed and laughed at. Even after I entered a sect, I was bullied by everyone else and beaten up all day and night. At this moment, Lin Fan paused to sigh for a moment. It seemed that there was so much pain in his heart that he could not describe it all. This mouth of his was full of lies. And they were told in such an honest manner that even Lin Fan was about to believe them. How about you? Lin Fan asked. Shut up. You either let me out of this place or we'll both die together. Cruel hollered out. Cruel, don't do this. The fact that we're both able to be in this place right now is a form of affinity as well. No matter what, we must both choose life over death today. I can tell that you've got a lot of pain within your heart. How about you tell me about them? Talking it out will help you feel happier. Look at Saint. Don't think that he's living it up right now. He's not going to be alive for much longer. Lin Fan continued. Quote. Cruel looked at Lin Fan while that menacing face of his was gradually softening. It was as though he was being moved slightly by that phrase of Lin Fan that, Saint is not going to be alive for much longer. Now that we're both inside this place, we've yet to reach a common consensus after such a long time. Additionally, your hand is now pierced right within my inner world. What can I even do to you? Lin Fan asked. Cruel closed his eyes gently before opening them up slowly as though he was busy recalling about something from the past. Normally when Cruel spoke, it would always be sinister and creepy. A single word of disagreement would be enough for him to break out into a fight. Everyone from the thousands of races were akin to fish meat while even his own race was equivalent to mere ants. At this moment, Cruel's voice was somewhat more peaceful, as though it had returned to normal. It did not sound like that of some evil being anymore. However, Lin Fan knew that this was all on the surface. Once he seized the opportunity, he would definitely bare his fangs. I was born way more than 10,000 years ago, and was one of the lowest classes of all ancient race beings. Due to that, I had to endure all sorts of torments. From an ancient race soldier to a decanus, a centurion, a tribunus, etc. I've been through all sorts of battles and was practically living on the brink of death countless of times. My life before the recent 10,000 years was a life of darkness. Within the ancient race, the strong would prey on the weak, and the weak ancient race beings were just ants. As Cruel recalled, he gradually spoke out slowly. On the other hand, Lin Fan was getting astonished as he heard the tale. The story that Cruel had mentioned sounded even more tragic than his. Because he was weak, he was nearly eaten up his fellow ancient race beings. Lin Fan almost could not believe that he could live on till now given how tragic his life was back then. Could it be that he was guarded by his own life's fortune? However, Lin Fan was sure to not let out that look of astonishment on his face. Instead, he sighed out, Highs. Seems like we're both pitiful beings. To think that your life experiences would be even worse than mine. I've said what I have to. Now, let me out, and I'll loosen my grip on your universal elixir. Cruel's eyes shone with an ominous glint as he said it. No, right now, the both of us have let go of the barriers within our hearts. You ought to trust me. I am an honest man and would never deceive others. As long as you loosen your grip, I will definitely let you out. Lin Fan shook his head while saying. By this, you're showing that you do not trust me, Cruel barked harshly as his face started to look menacing once more. It's not a matter of trust. It's a matter of principle, Lin Fan replied. HMPH, principle. Since that's the case, you can continue smelting then if you've got the guts. I've just got to see who can hold out all the way to the end. Cruel shouted out angrily. FCK, are you threatening me now? Smelt then, let's see who's afraid of whom. A single word of disagreement meant FC king it up till the end. In a jiffy, that power of refinement surged forth once more. Two cries of pigs being slaughtered rang out once more. This time around, the sounds were even more sorrowful than before. Ding, Eternal God Body experience points plus 150,000. Ding, Eternal God Body leveled up. Level 8, Physical Body State, Divine Celestial Level 9 State. At this moment, Lin Fan's heart leapt with joy. To think that his physical body state would actually level up under such enduring times. Lin Fan closed his eyes gently as two streams of tears flowed down the side of his eyes. This painful price that he had to pay was finally starting to give back the returns. The question was, what should he do now? So what if it were divine celestial level 9 state? What sh*t use would it be? This was an utmost being who had obtained an eternal god seat. Cruel was heaving out in fatigue right now as he perspired profusely. Right now, his body was severely damaged, and he did not know how long more he could last. But, he knew that if he were to loosen his grip on the universal elixir of the other party here, he would have to fall here for sure. Cruel, let us stop harming one another, shall we? You are the most tenacious ancient race being that I have ever met. This resilient state of mind that you possess is enough for me to respect you. HMPH. Let me go then. Even though Cruel was little more than a shell compared to the dying strength within him right now, but he still had to maintain his overbearing attitude. Alright, it's not that I can't let you go. However, a brave warrior such as yourself is truly someone that I can't help but admire. Therefore, I feel like hugging you. Can I? Lin Fan could feel the entire sky almost toppling as he said this. You're trying to humiliate me. Where would my face go to if I had to hug an ant? Cruel rejected vehemently. Lin Fan. Chapter 749. I am sorry, I am a human. Chapter 749. I'm sorry, I'm a human. No vel b in .c ohm. The curt reply of Cruel broke down Lin Fan's plan. Cruel, even though I'm of the human race, but heroes appreciate other heroes. Let us hug together as a form of mutual respect for one another. Lin Fan said. Haha, hug, we of the ancient race are powerful beings or born savage by nature. It's either live or die for us. There's no such thing in our lives as a disgusting hug that you living beings of the thousands of races do. Cruel scoffed coldly. Smelt, arg, ding, eternal god body experience points plus 150,000. Without any warning, what followed the moment he spoke out was a wave of smelting, and his body shuddered with it. Even now that his physical body state had strengthened, it did not help the issue at all. The pain was still ever so intense. Cruel, I revere you and would wish to hug you. Yet, you refuse my invitation. This means that you're not giving me face. And since you don't give me face, then I'll just have to continue smelting. Lin Fan was angered. Cruel looked at Lin Fan and burned with equal wrath within his heart. How could there be a living being like this in this world that would want to hug an ancient race being? At the same time, Cruel could not break through this barrier within his heart of having to hug an ant-like living being. That was a humiliation for himself. You're dreaming. The utmost being Cruel rejected once more. As an utmost being of the ancient race, he was a supreme existence. How could he hug an ant-like living being? Even if he were to die, it would be impossible. However, under the power of refinement and the immense torment, Cruel's heart was starting to waver. HMPH. Yours truly has already given in. Yet, you refuse to do what's good for you. This is courting death. So what if I were to die with you? At the very least, yours truly can be proud to say that I'll be dying with an utmost being of the ancient race. As for you, everything you own shall be given away and you'll turn into the laughing joke of all utmost beings for eternity. Lin Fan was attacking the heart of Cruel. Even though the ancient race beings were brutish, they were full of emotions. Though, it was also true that most of those emotions are negative. Even though the relationship between the 8 utmost beings of the ancient race might seem amicable from the outside, it was full of strife and plots. If they were truly so united, Saint wouldn't have insulted Cruel like that, and neither would Cruel bear such hatred towards the former. HMPH. Damn it, don't think that you'll be able to rile your utmost being here just by saying those things. Cruel yelled out. However, he bore a grudge in his heart over it. He felt indignant about his situation right now. If he were to truly die here, everything that he had ever possessed would disappear instantly overnight. Yours truly is not trying to rile you up. All I'm doing is speaking of the facts. Take a look, Saint is taking a jab at you outside once more. At this moment, a big war was breaking out outside the heaven and earth smelt. Saint, on the other hand, was still spouting nonsense. In the eyes of your utmost being here, all of you, just like Cruel, are mere ants. The moment Cruel heard these words, he spat out in rage with bloodshot eyes, Saint. Lin Fan sighed helplessly in his heart as well. Were Saint and Cruel some foes in their past lives or something? To think that Saint would continue to mock him so mercilessly. But, that was good as well. It was helping Lin Fan out after all. Cruel, how can you continue to endure this? If you were to die with yours truly here, you would be left with nothing. If it were me, I would definitely bear with it and bide my time so that I can kill Saint in one fell swoop. Lin Fan goaded. Are we hugging? Looking at how the situation was about to fall into place, Lin Fan asked. And no, absolutely not, Cruel shrieked out shrilly. Smelt. Arg hhhhhhhhhhh. Hug. And no. Smelt. Time passed by the second and minute. Lin Fan was truly close to breaking down right now. His body had long been destroyed to a pitiful state, and the situation was the same for Cruel. So what if he were an utmost being of the ancient race? He was still having a hell of a time. As for Lin Fan, he was truly hating this heaven and earth smelt of the system right now. What kind of dog's tea strongest system was this? This heaven and earth smelt should be his own treasure. And yet, it did not distinguish between him or anyone else. If only he could separate the smelting, how good would that be? The tragic cries were relentless. So sorrowful and bitter. Lin Fan had never experienced something as such. Within his mind, all sorts of memories recalled back his previous experience back in the Xuanwang world when he was completely smelted away. However, that time around, his physical body state wasn't all that great. So, he did not have to suffer as much. But this time around, his physical body state was much stronger than before. Naturally, he had to keep increasing the power of refinement so that Cruel would bow down in defeat. For Lin Fan, this was an unimaginable pain. Hug. No. Arg hhhhhhhhhhh. Cruel was half kneeling on the ground right now as the pain was intolerable. Even that hand of his that was gripping tightly onto the universal elixir was starting to quiver. Smelt. Stop. Cruel could no longer hang on anymore. You're agreeing? Lin Fan looked at Cruel and smirked. Cruel did not say anything much as he eventually nodded his head silently. However, the vengeance within his heart was surging up like tidal waves. He even swore that as long as he could get out of this place, he would definitely kill this human harshly. You should have said so earlier. Say, why do you think we had to endure this much pain together? Even though you're an utmost being of the ancient race, heroes acknowledge one another. A hug will mean that our affinity of knowing one another is not wasted. Lin Fan said. At that moment, the entire world fell silent. This was a scene of a miracle. An utmost being of the ancient race hugging with a being of the human race. This was a historical moment that had never ever happened before in the world. When Lin Fan and Cruel were hugging with one another, Lin Fan shut his eyes gently. He could only feel that all his efforts had not gone to waste. Is this the feeling of hugging? Even though Cruel was hating in his heart, his face changed ever so slightly at this moment. It was as though he was feeling a sensation he had never once felt before. This feeling of hugging was one that was really distant to Cruel. In fact, he had never felt this before. The birth of the ancient race beings was decreed by the heavens' will. Every single ancient race being took the heavens' will as their parents. This was a feeling that Cruel could not describe in words. Lin Fan felt the thumping heart of Cruel calm down a bit. Suddenly, a hand of Cruel placed itself on Lin Fan's back. This was an improvement. How does it feel? Lin Fan asked as he placed a hand on the back of Cruel's head. Cruel did not reply as though he had gone silent. Heroes acknowledge one another. Cruel acknowledged that he was a true hero, a hero of all the ancient race beings. Very. Piok. Cruel had wanted to say something, but he was cut short as his mind swirled all over the place before he fainted over. Wielding the 9-5 legendary brick in his hand, Lin Fan knocked out Cruel with a single slap. At that moment, Lin Fan raised his head. His face was full of tears as his lips twitched endlessly. Cruel, yours truly knows that this hug was wonderful. But, I'm sorry, I am a human. At this moment, Lin Fan truly cried out. Was this life of his easy? Without any absolute power or gale to push him forth, he was still always treading on the path forward. This was a lifetime of dominance. And with that, the first utmost being of the ancient race has been subdued by me. Even though this utmost being of the ancient race he had defeated was the weakest one, it was a form of improvement for Lin Fan. Lin Fan pushed Cruel away while that shimmering golden universal elixir floated back freely within his inner world. That was risky. This time around, it was really way too dangerous. If he had really stolen my universal elixir, I would have turned into one hell of a tragedy. The moment Lin Fan thought of that, his goosebumps rose up. As an utmost being of the ancient race, Cruel would have immense uses. And not only that, he's an eternal god state being who has obtained the eternal god seat. While killing him may bring about tons of benefits, it would be quite the pity to do so as well. Lin Fan tossed Cruel directly into his paradise, then churned his powers as the life force within him began to heal up his body. Chapter 750, Great Buddha's Light of Purification. Chapter 750, great Buddha's light of purification. Feng Qingzi, I'll see just what else you can do today. The might of the utmost being saint was domineering as he shrouded the entire world in his aura. However, he did not know how that piece of trash, cruel, was dealing with the human right now. He looked at the heaven and earth smelt that was floating peacefully in the air right now. It was extraordinary, he had to bring it back for sure. The faces of the female empress and the Namo Saint Emperor were serious. Even if the both of them joined hands, they were not a match for the utmost being. However, it wouldn't be an issue for them to hold him off. The female empress and the Namo Saint Emperor were both divine celestial level 10 state beings. However, none of them had received the eternal God seat. Therefore, they were still weaker than Saint in terms of power. Right now, there were 3 great ancient race beings here and Krul was stuck inside that strange-looking smelt, where there was no way to tell of the situation at all. Despite that, Saint and Fault before them right now were not easy to deal with either. Female Empress and Namo Saint Emperor, both of you have drifted through life ignobly for countless of years now, and your utmost has just kept a blind eye towards your actions, ignoring you guys. But, to think that you guys would have the guts to come provoke me today. Naturally, there's no way I can let you guys stay alive then. Saint said with a frosty tone. Today, he was going to go all out for a massacre and kill all of the remaining humans. Feng Qingzi, that lad might not be dead yet and is still within the heaven and earth smelt. Let us try to fight for some time and just wait out the situation. Namo Saint Emperor focused his face. If they were to go at it later, he might probably have to use every single last bit of strength he had. They had been hidden for a long time now, and their cultivation states had long reached that of a divine celestial level 10, eternal God state being. But, the FCKED up thing was that there could only be that many eternal God seats within the world. No matter how profound their foundations were, they could never take the step forth. Namo Saint Emperor breathed out heavily. Seemed like he had to show some true skills later on. Alright, Feng Qingzi did not think that the lad was dead either. The lad was one with many tricks up his sleeves. Even an utmost being might not be enough to have him killed. All of a sudden, Feng Qingzi roared out with a long and bright sound, "Today, this old man shall give the 2 utmost beings a good fight." Even though there was only 3 of them right now, their total strength was not comparable to both the utmost beings right here. However, it was no issue for them to hold them back for a while. HMPH, courting death. Today, I shall have all of you slain, so that we do not have any more issues in the future. Both utmost beings burst out. When they moved, the entire world trembled as all the laws within started going berserk at this very moment. For all of the powerful beings who were attracted over to this place, this wasn't a battle they could afford to take part in. Just the momentum brought forth by these people alone were more than enough to have them killed. NOVELP in .C Ohm. Within the heaven and earth smelt, Lin Fan connected to his paradise as the continuous amount of life force repaired his body tirelessly. Rebirth through Blood Sea, boundless saint spirit. Now that Blood Sea had been trained up to a certain state, there was even a literal ocean of blood formed within Lin Fan's paradise right now. With just a single thought, a vast amount of life force flushed through Lin Fan's body, regenerating that body that was damaged by the power of refinement. At this moment, the universal elixir that was just cultivated was emanating a holy glow that shot out with a banner of lights, running down Lin Fan's entire body. The universal elixir cultivated by Lin Fan was far from ordinary. Compared to any other one of the same level, it was stronger by at least 100 times. Every single skill he knew had entered the state of the Tao, and were inscribed onto the universal elixir as threads on its surface. A single thought could cause the entire world to topple over, and a single flip of his palm could devastate everything. The powers that were emanated were running rampant all the way as all of his skills churned out continuously like second nature, without any obstructions at all. Right now, within this universal elixir, the amount of power accumulated was far more than hundreds and thousands of divine celestial level 8, universal elixir state powerful beings combined. Along his way of cultivation, Lin Fan had depended on the system as a basis. However, at the same time, the foundation of his powers was extremely immense. Spirit weapons, Tao weapons, powerful beings. Lin Fan had conquered tons of these things. At the moment he cultivated his universal elixir, the true essences of water and fire that was left behind by the Fire-Water Emperor started rumbling out as well. Even though they weren't as tyrannical as the Fire-Water Emperor herself, they were still not to be underestimated. After an unknown period of time, Lin Fan spat out a breath of corrosive air. The corrosive air seemed like it had a soul of its own as it floated within the heaven and earth smelt and took on many different forms. It seemed as if it was about to split the entire world into two and convert every single thing within. Indeed, the path onwards has broadened after obtaining a universal elixir state. With the universe as a basis, I can control the heaven and earth while splitting out a world of my own as well. Lin Fan did not ponder any longer as he dove straight into his paradise. At this moment, the utmost being Cruel was being tied up by the mythical parasol tree, with countless of living beings suppressing him. Even if his powers were torrential, there was no way he was going to make a comeback out of this. Right now, Cruel was immensely regretful. He truly shouldn't have trusted that human. He was full of tricks and a thoroughly sneaky sleazebag. Let me go. Let go of me. By now, Cruel's entire body was broken and damaged due to the smelting. However, a boundless amount of power was still surging within him like a raging river, that was pushing back at the mythical parasol tree. Purify. Right now, Lin Fan's skill of purification was nothing to be scoffed at. It had already reached level 19, and the light of purification was immense. Instantly, it caged up the utmost being Cruel within it. However, if he wanted to reform an utmost being, this amount of power was still not enough just yet. Although, now that the Cruel's body was immensely damaged by the heaven and earth smelt, it opened up a world of possibilities for Lin Fan. Cruel, I'm not going to kill you. Lin Fan hollered out as he pointed with his finger. The universal elixir within his inner world shot out while revolving. All the 7 emotions and 6 worldly desires turned into a massive river that seeped into the depths of Cruel's heart. Damned ant, you must be dreaming if you think that you can reform me. Cruel howled out while struggling repeatedly, ignoring the pulls of the tree branches from the mythical parasol tree. However, in the blink of an eye, they regained their control over him. A starving dead camel is still bigger than a horse. Seems like an utmost being is not an utmost being for nothing. To think that you would continue to struggle even at this point. However, it is all just a waste of your efforts. Between every single bellow of the utmost being Cruel, all sorts of gods of his martial arts Tao formed into a devastating giant. This was Cruel's last attempt at struggling. He wanted to sacrifice everything he had to suppress Lin Fan. However, for Lin Fan, the current Cruel was nothing more than fish meat on a chopping board. No matter how much noise he made, it didn't matter at all. Demon City, suppress. The lower graded utmost treasure shone with an immense light as all the connate 5 elements joined together as one. The big ancient demon howled out furiously as the paradise brightened up immensely. A titanic punch that was shining as though it was cast in a golden mold shot forth with a devastating amount of power to it. Instantly, it ravaged through that giant that was formed from all sorts of martial arts gods and shattered it into dust. Cruel, you don't have to fight back anymore. All your efforts will be for naught. Come and follow under yours truly. Leave your position as an utmost being. Lin Fan's entire body shone with a bright Buddha light as a weird phenomenon rose up. Thousands of Buddhas chanted their Buddhist sutras that coiled around Lin Fan's surroundings and revolved endlessly. Gradually, a typhoon made up of Buddhist sutras was formed as it wrapped itself around the body of the utmost being Cruel. The infinite Buddha light seemed like banners that were pulling out at the body of the utmost being Cruel. Lin Fan's face was changing rapidly right now. A sort of compassionate benevolence of the providence that could purify all lives started spreading out across the entire paradise. The menacing-looking Cruel started howling out furiously. However, that face of his was gradually changing. It was starting to soften as that ominous aura from him started shifting. In fact, the aura that was directed out towards Lin Fan was transforming at the same time. Within this paradise that was filled with the ominous aura of Cruel, a change happened as a bright golden flare burst forth from the body of Cruel, replacing that previously ominous aura entirely. The face of Cruel turned merciful and harmonious, and was now starting to look friendly. Ding! Purification success. Ding! Purification leveled up. Ding! Purification has evolved into Great Buddha's light of purification. The golden swastika within Lin Fan's body suddenly changed into a single golden word, which was contorting and transforming continuously. At times it was like a dragon, and at other times it was like a tiger. As though the golden word was being summoned by something, a long golden banner appeared all of a sudden that wrapped itself on the universal elixir entirely. Purify. It was just a single word, yet it possessed all the wisdom and logic present within this entire universe. Lin Fan had not undergone any Buddhist teachings before, but because of this purification skill, even his own aura was starting to change right now. Sitting there quietly, it was as though he had obtained the Tao of a powerful being from the Buddha race. Even a single look or aura from him was more than enough to purify anything. Naturally, this was just a manifestation of Lin Fan's inner thoughts. If this were truly the case, he would have become the strongest being in this entire universe a long time ago. Chapter 751, Incomparably Frightening Strength. Chapter 751, Incomparably Frightening Strength. Bam! Right now, the situation outside wasn't looking too optimistic. With the combined strength of two utmost beings, even if Feng Qingzi's strength was equivalent to theirs individually, he was being pushed back without being able to do anything at all. Namo Saint Emperor opened his mouth in rage. Instantly, a rainbow-colored island appeared floating gently in the air. Are you going to go at it with your life? When the female empress caught sight of the rainbow-colored island, her expression changed. What else can I do unless I go at it with all I've got? If we were to drag this on, we wouldn't be able to hold out until the end. Namo Saint Emperor replied seriously. Since that's the case, this seems to be the only way. The female empress did not think too much anymore as she opened up her tender, jade-like fingers. From there, a throne that brought with it an endless authority floated within the sky. The moment the throne appeared with its endless might, tiles started to extend out with the throne as the center of everything, as it formed a heavenly path. Instantly, the female empress appeared on the throne and pointed out as though she was commanding her empire. Namo Island, Royal Heaven Throne, both of these were supreme treasures. They were not crafted out by either the Namo Saint Emperor or the female empress themselves. By a miraculous encounter, both of them had managed to obtain each of these treasures, and from then on, soared up without hindrance. It was a straight path up to the peak of all of the powerful beings. No one knew of the origins of the Namo Island. Even the Namo Saint Emperor himself could only harbor a guess that it had something to do with the Buddha race. There were countless living beings in the Namo Island. Colossal dragons, Buddhas, Arhats. All sorts of countless living beings resided there while chanting Buddhist scriptures all day long. A bright Buddhist light shone forth from the island and pierced up into the clouds, as though it was communicating with an existence from the unknowns. Boom! Instantly, a ringing Buddhist voice floated out of the Namo Island. Amitabha. This was an ancient Buddhist voice unlike any of the chants that those beings of the current Buddha race were chanting. The moment the voice rang out, the entire world trembled under its might as everything went into chaos while golden lotuses descended. A gigantic black lotus floated out of the Namo Island. Instantly, the world was caged up by a bright and immense Buddhist light that emanated out of it. As for this shut lotus, it suddenly opened up magnificently petal after petal. It was exquisitely beautiful. In the middle of the lotus, there seemed to be someone seated there. By the time the lotus had opened up entirely, an extremely vicissitudinous aura was emitted from it. Seated in the middle of that lotus was a humongous, pitch-black Buddha. His eyes were tightly shut as that precious expression of his was extremely dignified. However, there was a thick and evil Buddhist light seeping out of it at the same time. Even if it were an evil Buddhist light, the feeling it gave off was still something that would have everyone feeling that this was the way a Buddha should be. That's the ancient evil Buddha. To think that the Namo Saint Emperor would have an accomplishment like this. When Feng Qingzi caught sight of this evil Buddha before him, he was startled as well. According to the legends, there was once an extremely powerful being of the Buddha race who had wanted to obtain the seat of the ancient revered Buddha in the past. Because of that, he severed all the 7 emotions and 6 worldly desires and entrusted them within a treasure. After that, because of the changes in the world, this treasure that held on to the 7 emotions and 6 worldly desires of the extremely powerful being of the Buddha race was lost within the world. To think that it would be obtained by the Namo Saint Emperor. The moment the treasure appeared, Feng Qingzi was not the only one surprised. Even the utmost beings of the ancient race were a little startled as well. To think that the treasure within which the old bald monk had entrusted his evil thoughts would be obtained by you. Looking at the Namo Island, Saint let out a frosty laugh. The Namo Saint Emperor did not say anything much. Roaring out, a long river of Shenyang pills started boiling. Burn. The Namo Saint Emperor had lived in seclusion for a long time now. Naturally, the amount of Shenyang pills he possessed was astronomical. Now that he was faced up against an utmost being of the ancient race, he did not dare to be careless. Ever since he had obtained this Namo Island, the Namo Saint Emperor had lived a domineering life as one of the strongest beings in the ancient saint world. In the past, even if he were to meet any powerful beings, he would not be bothered at all. However, the one he was going up against right now was an utmost being of the ancient race right now. Namo Saint Emperor naturally had to take out all of his abilities at this moment. Boom. With that, a large amount of Shenyang pills was incinerated instantly. Upon receiving this tremendous amount of energy, the Namo Island started going berserk. That titanic, pitch-black Buddha jerked his eyes open furiously as two beams of jet-black Buddha lights shielded down the entire world. Every single place which the naked eye could see was all filled with chaos. Amitabha, the titanic, pitch-black Buddha stood up all of a sudden and raised a heaven-encompassing hand. Countless Buddhas surrounded that gigantic hand as they sang out scriptures. The vast might was boundless as it covered the entire world. Suppress. This was everything that the Namo Saint Emperor had right now. He had already taken out the trump card that he had been keeping. Namo Saint Emperor, to think that you have hid this unusual secret treasure that you had obtained so deeply. When the female empress caught sight of this, her heart rattled as she smiled out as well. The stronger the Namo Saint Emperor was, the more beneficial it would be for them. Female empress, what are you still watching over there for? For this lad, I've really given a lot this time around. The Namo Saint Emperor said while experiencing a heart-wrenching pain. Even though the Namo Island was strong, it wasn't something that was so easy to use. Each time he used it, he would be assaulted with all sorts of negative feelings and intents. If he didn't want to be possessed by them entirely, he would have to purge them out of his body. Given the situation right now, he would have to sit down and meditate for an entire year at least after this battle. Alright, the female empress did not hesitate anymore. The throne had the ability to conquer the entire world. With the descent of the female empress, all living beings would have to bow down. Lifting her tender finger, the throne shone with an intensely brightly light. A boundless amount of power shot down from the void. Ants, you're all ants. Do you guys really think that you can defeat your utmost here with just these tricks? Saint yelled out as his aura erupted out like a dragon. Boom, all of a sudden, lightning flashed, and it seemed as though the entire sky had lost its brightness. The boundless heavens will, unparalleled power. Both Saint and Fault bellowed out as their entire bodies were covered up in a mysterious and deep power. As they bashed out with a single punch each, the force that came forth and opposed the power of the female empress. Bam, bam, as though it was provoked, the face of the titanic, pitch-black Buddha was incredibly angry, and that colossal body of his began to quiver. The lotus below his feet began to collide against one another. Countless secret skills of the Buddha race gushed forth and turned into Buddha dragons that wrapped around the hand of the titanic Buddha. Using a world of Buddhas, your emperor here shall fight you guys with all I've got. The Namo Saint Emperor roared out as his blood boiled. Ancient Buddha, communicate through the world and strengthen my body with that limitless Buddha power. Namo Saint Emperor knitted his brows. The utmost beings had long gone beyond his imagination. In the blink of an eye, a punch bolted out, causing a vortex to appear in front of them. Using the Namo Island as a basis, Namo Saint Emperor communicated with the ancient Buddha race that had long disappeared in the rivers of time. Boom! Buddha flowers scattered down as the world was covered in a sea of flowers at that moment. N-O-V-L-P in .c Om. One flower, one world. A single thought is eternity. Damn it, Namo Saint Emperor, you're seeking your own humiliation. Saint bellowed out as he slammed with a palm, suppressing that boundless Buddha power. Bam, bam, the void started exploding as time and space seemed to have shattered. Namo Saint Emperor's face was deathly pale as he stumbled back. That titanic Buddha of his began to break down as it was crumbled by that palm of Saint. Even with the power of an entire world, it wasn't enough to go up against the utmost being. Feng Qingzi and the female empress were striking out simultaneously. However, even as they used their strongest moves, they were all blocked down by Fault. The ancient race suppresses across the infinite worlds. Do you think that something like would be enough for you to come up against your utmost here? We are on the cusp of the opening of the infinite worlds, and the heavens' will is gradually awakening. Today, your utmost shall let you guys have a taste of the heavens' will's power. Saint roared out as both of his arms tore through the sky, and an infinitely huge crack appeared above the heads of everyone. Shing! All of a sudden, an incomparable amount of energy bolted down into this world. Under the booster of this power, Saint's aura suddenly turned extremely frightening. Not good. Feng Qingzi's face took a huge turn as a really bad feeling wormed itself into his mind right now. He had not expected that the heavens will of the ancient saint world would be gradually awakening. Even if it were just a fraction of its awakening, the power that was boosting Saint up right now was even more horrifying. Saint pointed out with his finger. Instantly, the treasures of the female empress and Namo Saint Emperor exploded instantly while they were repelled back without any chance to fight at all. Chapter 752. Thankfully, I made it in time. Chapter 752. Thankfully, I made it in time. Loss. This is a huge A*S loss. The Namo Saint Emperor was on the brink of tears right now. He knew that the utmost beings were really strong, but he hadn't expected them to be beta*s to this extent. Saint Emperor, are you alright? Feng Qingzi asked. I'm fine. Even though the Namo Saint Emperor was feeling really pained over this, the situation right now, it did not accord them the time to overthink it. What should we do now? Saint has communicated over with the Heaven's Will. Even though the Heaven's Will has yet to awaken completely, just this strength alone is enough to crush us completely. Namo Saint Emperor looked over at the female empress. Right now, she was nowhere better than him. The formidable power had sent her throne falling back. In fact, the moment that energy seeped into the female empress body, her paradise started going into a state of chaos that rampaged all over, just so that it could repel and purge out this energy. Both of these treasures were utmost treasures. However, to think that they couldn't even hold up against a single blow of Saint. The strength of Namo Saint Emperor was especially formidable. Even the female empress herself would have to think twice before striking out at him. And right now, he had even burned up Shenyang pills to strike forth with his strongest attack. Even though he hadn't attained an eternal god seat, in theory, that should be enough to clash up against the utmost being. Do we have to truly give up on this lad and make our escape? Looking at that horrifying utmost being, the face of the female empress could not help but get serious. If this were to carry on, out of the three of them, Feng Qingzi might be the only one who could get to leave this place alive. Saint Emperor, female empress, you guys should leave first. No matter what, that lad is the disciple of this old man here. Let this old man take the responsibility of caring for him. I can still hold out for a bit longer. Feng Qingzi said. No, even though he's your disciple, he is one of us from the human race. Today, even if I, Namo Saint Emperor, were to die here, I would not regret it. Namo Saint Emperor replied. Namo Saint Emperor had existed for a long time now. In the past, he had done something that had him regretting immensely. Back when the Supreme Being came looking for him and invited him to head out together to kill the Ancient One, he rejected due to fear. Even though it had been 10,000 years since then, this regret had been rooted deep in his heart. Now that history was repeating itself, there was no way he would step away from this. Furthermore, he had already sacrificed so much this time around. If he were to leave without any interest at all, he would be indignant about this. None of you shall dream of leaving today. Both the utmost beings glared at everyone present with a frosty look. Feng Qingzi, once we're done today, the guarded ground shall have no more guardians to them. And, you shall die here as well. Ha ha, this old man has lived for such a long time now. Truly, I've never been afraid of death. Even if the Heaven's Will is blessing you guys, this old man isn't fearful at all. Feng Qingzi chuckled out in a carefree manner. The thing that had Feng Qingzi worrying right now was the fact about why the Heaven's Will was awakening this quickly. Could it mean that the beings of the thousands of races were doomed to be annihilated? All these years, Feng Qingzi had been searching for the true secret behind the ancient saint world. He wanted to know why everything was happening the way it was. However, despite treading through the entire ancient saint world, he could not find an answer at all. Good, your utmost shall fulfill your wishes today then. Both of the utmost beings started moving, as every single step they took seemed to be treading through space and time. In the blink of an eye, they had caged Feng Qingzi and the other two up together. Saint was giving off a bright glow right now as though he was the supreme ruler of the entire universe. He then slammed out with a single punch that momentarily caused the world to quake. The punch consisted of all the Tao of martial arts within. Even though it looked to be simple, Feng Qingzi could tell that the one single punch had already sealed up the entire world. Even the nimblest of all movement skills would not allow them to dodge that at all. Everything it passed withered and was devastated. This was a force not to be reckoned with. Under this single punch, a formidable momentum encompassed an area spanning 1,000,000 miles in radius. Every single living being within these 1,000,000 miles started trembling uncontrollably while an inexplicable fear suddenly appeared within their hearts. Feng Qingzi roared out as that half-mooned golden chakram gave off a godly gleam before spiraling out. A ferocious intent burst forth from it. Feng Qingzi's personal intent wasn't the only thing within the intent that burst forth from it. There was even the intent of an unparalleled ancient race being. HMPH. Feng Qingzi, do you think that you can block this with his help? Even if you are to survive, both of them must die. Saint's voice was cold. He was extremely familiar with this half-mooned golden chakram. Once upon a time, it was an utmost treasure of the ancient race. The fact that it was even being used by an ant-like living being was an utter humiliation for the ancient race. The expressions of Namo Saint Emperor and the female empress took a huge turn as they utilized their movement techniques to its peak. They had already been prepared for this the moment they knew that they were facing up against the utmost beings. Their skills were enough for them to live life ignobly. But, to pit themselves against the utmost beings was to court death inevitably. FCK it, Namo Saint Emperor yelled out as he spat out a mouthful of essence blood. His fingers were nimble like a butterfly as they drew out intricate symbols in the air. The moment the symbols were formed, a bright golden light shone out. On the other hand, the face of Namo Saint Emperor turned pale by a significant amount. When one was at a cultivation state such as his, essence blood was incomparably important. Even a single drop of his essence blood would be enough to aid any living being to turn into a superiorly powerful being. World of Namo, Namo Saint Emperor howled out as a ball of spirit chi began to gather above his head. All of the spirit chi manifested into figures of Buddha as though it was a world of Buddha. Suppress. Clang. The moment this world of Buddha made contact with the punch of Saint, a series of loud clanging sounds rang out. The Buddha that was seated right in the middle of the world of Buddha started crumbling as though its body could not withstand the power that it was facing. The face of Namo Saint Emperor was getting more terrible by the second. At the same time, he looked at that heaven and earth smelt. N-O-V-E in .c ohm. Bloody hell, this lad is truly a troublemaker. Seems like this time around, he's really going to be the cause of death of me. This single punch of Saint encompassed everything in this world. It seemed that no one would be able to block it. This was especially the case now that it was bestowed additional powers by the heavens will of the ancient Saint world. It was formidable to the extreme. Go to hell, Saint bellowed out as his power got even steadier. It seemed that every single living thing would be destroyed and buried within this single punch. Saint Emperor, Female Empress, Feng Qingzi's face changed. Right now, the number of genius beings in the ancient Saint world who could stand up against the utmost beings was getting less by the day. If they were to lose two powerful beings this time around, it would be an unrecoverable setback for the thousands of races. Feng Qingzi, you had better care about yourself first. Fault smirked out as he flicked his finger, causing the void to tear out in his path. Even for Feng Qingzi, the pressure that was being mounted on him was immense. Boom! At this moment, an explosion boomed out. The world fell into a shade of dusty ashes as everything within a radius of 1,000,000 miles started quaking. Ha ha ha! Saint tilted his head up to the heavens and roared with a deranged laughter. He believed that there should be no living beings who could remain alive under the might of this single punch of his. No matter how strong they were, they couldn't possibly remain alive. No. Feng Qingzi's heart was thumping anxiously. However, this was a foregone conclusion. There was nothing he could do about it. Saint Emperor, Female Empress, highs. Feng Qingzi shook his head and sighed. He had not expected things to turn out like this. Given the current situation, the odds were direly stacked against him. Just as Saint turned around and was about to join hands with Fault to kill Feng Qingzi, they caught sight of a lone figure standing upright in this world that was filled with ashes right now. Seems like, thankfully, I made it in time. This voice. Instantly, Feng Qingzi's head jerked in that direction. The moment he heard this voice, his face lit up as his eyes shone with a look of absolute disbelief. Chapter 753, Leave with your mother. Chapter 753, Leave with your mother. The dust between the world had settled by now. However, the lands which were filled with life were now desolate and shrouded with an aura of death. A lone figure stood upright between the heaven and earth. Feng Qingzi's face was gleeful. He couldn't have misheard that voice. It was the voice of his dear disciple. However, when he took a closer look at the figure standing there, Feng Qingzi's face changed entirely once more. Ha ha, cruel, to think that you could have killed that human. When Saint caught sight of that figure, he smirked. Feng Qingzi, that disciple of yours is dead now. All of your hopes are dashed by now. Saint laughed out wildly. Even though in his heart, cruel was nothing more than a piece of trash, it shouldn't be an issue for him to kill an ant-like human given his strength. It was just that. Cruel, why did you stop my attack? Saint demanded in a harsh tone. Even though Cruel had just done a great service for the ancient race, he was still but a mere ant in the eyes of Saint. Within that smelt, I've already devoured that human whole and stolen everything that he had. However, the heart of that human was extremely resolute. To think that he could still maintain a bit of control despite all of that. But right now, there are no more issues left. Everything of his is now just a part of me. Cruel replied coldly. Cruel looked over at the heaven and earth smelt. Stretching out his palm, that heaven and earth smelt swiveled violently over before landing in front of him. But, I did gain a fair bit of benefits from devouring that human. This thing here is the heaven and earth smelt. While it doesn't belong to any grade, it's definitely way more valuable than even a supreme graded utmost treasure. It can smelt anything within this universe. Your utmost here was nearly killed because of this thing. The demeanor of Cruel right now was really natural, just as he would usually be. It surpasses a supreme graded utmost treasure. Saint did not have any interest towards that human at all. However, when he heard Cruel mentioning how precious that heaven and earth smelt was, he let out a look of fascination. That's right, even when I was within the smelt, I could have been smelted into my core remnants with just a single thought. No matter how strong one is, they can't defend against the power of refinement at all. Cruel chuckled out. Hand that treasure over to me. The moment Saint heard this, his heart was filled with a strong desire. To think that the human would possess such a treasure. It was no wonder that he couldn't even break open the smelt given his own powers. Seemed like it truly was a rare treasure. Cruel let out a strain of displeasure. Why, you're unwilling. Saint's expression changed as though he would snatch it over forcefully the moment Cruel shook his head. Come over here and get it then. Instantly, the heaven and earth smelt started revolving as it shrunk smaller before landing onto Cruel's palms. Get your mark off it and toss it over. Saint replied. Come over and get it yourself. Cruel continued. All of a sudden, the tension in the atmosphere got really intense. Feng Qingzi was still in a daze, unable to recover from the shock of his own disciple being slain. How could this be? Feng Qingzi could not dare to imagine that his disciple had died just like that. The faces of Namo Saint Emperor and the female empress were equally stunned. They knew that the thing that saved them was the final burst of intent from Lin Fan's consciousness. But, it had disappeared entirely by now. The female empress shook her head and sighed. If she were to tell this to Zhan, that brat might be pretty saddened. In the blink of an eye, 4 years had passed. She had thought that the lad would grow up to be an unparalleled supreme overlord. But, to think that he would die midway unfortunately like this. There were countless geniuses amongst the thousands of races. But even then, so what? Only those who could reach the endgame were the true winners. Ever since the ancient times, there had been countless geniuses who had died in the path of their cultivation. No matter how fabulous their potential and gifts were, it was all useless as they perished amidst the sands of time. Cruel, you would dare to defy my orders. Saint seethed harshly. He felt that something was off. But, he just couldn't figure out what it was. I wouldn't dare to, Cruel replied. Then, toss that treasure over. Cruel barked out. Come over and take it yourself. No matter how Saint phrased it, Cruel replied with the same words. He then looked over at Fault. Do you need it? Fault was startled and took a while to snap back to reality. His heart was then filled with some greed. However, the moment this greed started rising, a burst of fury shot forth from Saint. That's mine. Saint was enraged right now, truly enraged. He had not expected Cruel to dare defy his intention. Cruel stretched out his palm where the heaven and earth smelt sat quietly on it. The meaning was clear, if you want it, you have to come take it yourself. For a moment, Saint did not know how to react. He glared at Cruel sternly, trying to make out anything different about him. But, no matter how he sized him up, Cruel was still Cruel. He was still that same piece of trash that Saint had viewed him as. I don't wish to give you this treasure. But, if I don't, you're going to kill me and look for a new utmost being replacement. Cruel remarked. That's right, you've grown smarter. Saint smirked coldly. Then, come over and get it for yourself. Cruel replied. Now that the lad is dead, is it time for us to leave this place? The female empress whispered. Namo Saint Emperor did not reply for a moment or two. He too was feeling that it was about time for them to leave. Everything had failed. The lad had died. This was a great loss for the human race. Even though Feng Qingzi was anguished, the aged face of his was giving off a frosty expression right now. He knew that given the current situation, it was impossible for them to kill these utmost beings. Now that there were 3 utmost beings gathered here, it would definitely require some effort if they wanted to leave this place safely. Saint Emperor, female empress. Wait for me, and we'll attempt to break out together. We'll only be truly safe after we reach the guarded ground. Feng Qingzi transmitted to the both of them telepathically. Yes, the Namo Saint Emperor and the female empress nodded their heads seriously. Given the current situation, that should be the only way. They would first seek shelter under the guarded ground before thinking of a way to leave at an opportune time. Otherwise, given the strength of these utmost beings, even if they were to escape to the depths of the world, they would definitely be hunted down. At this moment, Lin Fan had already entered stealth mode and was hanging out behind Cruel, waiting for the other party to make their move. However, the thing that left Lin Fan speechless was that this saint was one hell of a lazy bum. Wasn't he just making a request for him to head over personally? It was not as though that would kill him. Alright, I'll come and retrieve it myself. Saint snarled out. Taking a single step, he appeared before the face of Cruel in the next second. Those eyes that were filled with wrath glared straight into Cruel's eyes. You had better behave yourself well from now on. Otherwise, you know of the consequences. Looking at the smelt in the palms of Cruel, Saint could sense a vicissitudinous aura being emanated out of it. This was a treasure, an absolute one at that. Saint stretched out his hands slowly and grabbed at that heaven and earth smelt. Suddenly, Saint realized to his surprise that he couldn't lift up the heaven and earth smelt at all. Saint's face was frosty cold right now, thinking that this was Cruel's doing. But just at this moment, Cruel let out a smile as he slapped at the back of Saint's head. You're courting death. Instantly, Saint reacted as he bellowed. His eyes shone with an endless rage. To think that this trash would dare to strike at him. Feng Qingzi and the others were prepared to make their escape. However, when they caught sight of the situation right now, they found themselves unable to comprehend what was happening. What was going on? The utmost beings were definitely going to get into a conflict. Saint raised his hand and grabbed at Cruel's throat. His eyes were about to spill fire out of them. Do you know that you're looking for death? Do you really think that I wouldn't dare to kill you? Saint roared out in anger, wanting to choke Cruel to death in one grip. Hue. Cruel was unfazed right now as his expression changed into one that was extremely benevolent. Amitabha. This series of changes was too quick that Saint was unable to react to it, wondering if Cruel had turned stupid. However, a suddenly chilling burst of light bolted at him. True Origin's crushing kick. In 1/1000th of a second, Saint realized that something was off as he channeled every single last bit of power in his body, rumbling to block this kick. FCK. To think that his reaction time would be so swift. Lin Fan was taken aback, evidently not expecting Saint to react this quickly. Just this reaction speed alone was faster than Lin Fan's speed entirely. BOBS bursting fist of the North Star. Lin Fan's hands were fast as lightning. Within a single thought, thousands of fists rained out. Bam, bam. At this moment, Lin Fan was wild as the BS bursting fist of the North Star exploded out. Boom. Within this short period of time, Saint's chest underwent a series of speedy changes. They grew, and burst, N-O-V-E in .C ohm. With the countless explosions that boomed out, the entire world shook as though it was about to collapse under its might. It worked. Lin Fan did not know how the situation was like right now, but he knew for sure that the B*OBS bursting fist of the North Star possessed an unparalleled amount of power to it. In an instant, this saint must have been crippled. My dear disciple, you're not dead. When Feng Qingzi caught sight of the figure, his heart nearly popped out in joy. Instantly, he appeared beside Lin Fan and gripped him with his hand. Dear disciple, hurry up and leave with your revered master. Now was the best moment for them to make their great escape. FCK, leave with your mother, hurry and seize the chance to help me make the last hit. Lin Fan yelped out instead. This was a rare chance. If he were to let this go, there would be no way of getting something like this once more. Cruel, I'll give you a strengthening buff. Help me kill the other party. Lin Fan did not hesitate as he slammed down on Cruel's groin with a kick. The dual functions of the True Origin's crushing kick were showcased once again at this very moment. Arg! Saint cried out tragically. Arg! Cruel howled out in sorrow as well. However, it was as though a battle god had possessed him as his aura climbed steadily. He had entered a frenzied state right now. Chapter 754, Determined to kill Saint. Chapter 754, Determined to kill Saint. In this flash of a short-lived blaze where everything happened so suddenly, no one could react to it at all. Lin Fan's sequence of fists that were bursting with a thunderous momentum were raining down on Saint like raindrops. A tragic wail burst forth from the throat of Saint, similar to that of a beast's cry. With that single True Origin's crushing kick of Lin Fan, he had unleashed the explosive force of Cruel's potential, which was running rampant right now. Everything beyond and within this world seemed to be under his supreme reign. At this moment, Cruel felt that a single fist of his would be enough to knock Saint flying into the sky. Brazen. Falt's face focused up as he looked around. He was only caught adrift momentarily, and all of a sudden, things had already gotten messed up to this extent. Old man, stop him. I can handle Saint. Lin Fan's body moved nimbly like a dragon right now as he dodged and snuck attacks all around the place. But, the main source of firepower right now came from Cruel. Even though Cruel was no match for Saint, after the booster of the True Origin's crushing kick, his powers had already reached a maximum at this point. Not only that, Saint's chest had already exploded countless of times by now, causing him to break down to his lowest point. The only reason he was still hanging on was because of his innate strength that was tiding him through this. Cruel, you're courting death. As an utmost being of the ancient race, how dare you help these ant-like beings? Saint bellowed out as that face of his became so menacing that it was almost contorting up. N-O-V-E-L-B-I-N-C-O-M. All he could feel right now was that his chest was being bitten on by something right now, as the waves of pain cut themselves right into his heart. In fact, it was even affecting the gathering of his powers right now. Good lad, I haven't misjudged you indeed. Namo Saint Emperor cheered out. Initially, he had thought that this was going to be a tragedy for sure. But to think that things would take on such a huge turn of events. This was something he hadn't expected at all. Lin Fan circled around Saint like an agile snake that swiveled and twisted, dodging every single attack. He then turned his head around. What good lad, call yours truly the mother *C King. And also, who the FCK are you? The only wish that Lin Fan had right now was to keep Saint in this place. This was a small and simple request. But, looking at the current situation right now, Saint should be able to hold on for a bit longer. Though, for how long more he was able to hold out was entirely up to his own capabilities. The face of Namo Saint Emperor changed suddenly, somewhat pissed. He had fought tooth and nail, and expended everything he had in order to help this guy when from the start till end, this guy did not even know who he was. Xuanwang world, don't tell me that you've forgotten everything you've done to me there. Namo Saint Emperor commented. Xuanwang world, what did I do to you there? What, don't come here and slander me for no reason. Yours truly is a man of principle. You must have gotten the wrong guy. Naturally, Lin Fan was not going to admit it. Back when he was in the Xuanwang world, he had nearly toyed that entire world into destruction. However, all of a sudden, it jolted back into Lin Fan. You're the Namo Saint Emperor. Back in the lower world, there were 3 people who were the worst victims of his FC King up. One of them was the Namo Saint Emperor, and the second was the female Empress. But amongst them, there was that 7 Saint old dog who had the longest lasting grudge with him. But, Lin Fan did not know where that 7 Saint old dog had disappeared to. Ever since he entered the ancient Saint world, he hadn't heard anything about him at all. That's right, that's your emperor here. However, your emperor is not someone that calculative and all, which is why. Namo Saint Emperor tossed back his robes as he commented righteously as though he was about to rail on and on. However, all of a sudden, he realized that the lad hadn't been listening to him at all. Flying heavens. PSHEW. The void rippled out as Lin Fan burst forth with thousands of fists punching out. The entire void was filled with illusory figures of Lin Fan's punches, which howled out and caused a tornado to build from them. Courting death, Saint had never ever been in such a pitiful state. At this moment, he was exploding from anger internally. A single mouthful of putrid gas burst forth from his mouth and swiveled up before gathering at the top of his head. Utmost being of the ancient race. True body's descent. The moves of Saint were all extraordinary. All of a sudden, the putrid gas began to converge into one single huge egg. The egg then burst open, where a peerlessly supreme giant stood forth, supporting the heaven and earth. Die, Saint bellowed out. Using his palms to push down, a repressive pressure was emitted out with his body at the center. This power was so strong that it pushed back Lin Fan and Cruel instantly. As for that supremely colossal giant, it roared out vehemently with both hands, which were as black as mountain valleys, cover the entire sky. At this moment, it seemed as though the entire world was under the control of this giant. Arg! Suddenly, Saint's facial features began to contort. No one knew when, but the flying heavens had managed to seep through the layers of void and seize the opportunity when Saint's legs were wide open to burst forth from the ground. That edged tip of the flying heavens shone with a bright gleaming glow. Long Zon, we must let a new A**s get deflowered beautifully under the glory of this world once more. Haha, as the beautiful sun sets, let the breathtaking scene of the A**us deflowering send blood petals spraying into the sky. Zigwang, let us join hands once more. Zigwang and Long Zon held hands as they looked at one another and smiled with a smile so bright that it looked like the edges of the world. Burn, even though he wasn't really rich now, Lin Fan still burnt countless Shengyang pills in every single expenditure. Right now, that amount was around 500 million pills. Against the utmost being, Lin Fan did not dare to be overly careless. Even if Saint had received his entire set of chest punching and was on the brink of breaking down, Lin Fan did not dare to look down on him. Boom! 500 million Shenyang pills were burnt up entirely as the flying heavens went berserk, sending a wild force rampaging through the world. As for Saint, that hidden place of his seemed to have been peeked through by someone right now. This was a really unpleasant feeling. Instantly, flying heavens disappeared from the world. The face of Saint was really terrible right now. He wanted to use his powers to churn and resist this incoming force. However, the pain had already made its way right into his heart. The giant that floated above his head jerked momentarily as well, as though it was about to disintegrate immediately because of Saint's mistake. Damn it, god damn it, Saint was incensed right now. He used both of his hands to grab out at his back as those eyes of his that could almost spit out fire right now were fixated on Lin Fan with a deathly intent. As for Cruel, he seized the chance at this moment as well. With a fist that seemed to tear the world apart, he pummeled it out towards Saint. Bam! The body of Saint shook tremendously. With this Cruel being in a frenzied state, the power that his fist contained could practically devastate the entire world. Ugh! Good shot. Saint's body was sent flying back all the way while he spat out a mouthful of blood. Lin Fan's heart leapt with joy. Instantly, he sent forth a tremendous amount of power. Mythical parasol tree. Thousands of tree branches lined the sky as they pierced out of the void. Twisting and contorting as though they had a life of their own, they grabbed out and tried to coil Saint within them. Saint, the moment Fault saw this, his face changed. He burst forth with a formidable amount of power. When he looked at the perpetrator, his anger was boiling even further. Go to hell! Fault pushed Feng Qingzi away and darted towards Lin Fan with his finger pointed forward. The amount of power was boundless as though a volcano had just erupted, causing the entire void to quake in its presence. Old man, what are you doing? Can you pay more attention? Lin Fan's attention was solely focused on Saint. However, he had suddenly realized he was now the target of a formidable amount of power, scaring the sh*t out of him. Bam! The boundless amount of power passed through Lin Fan entirely. Good disciple, hang on. Because his mind slipped for a moment, Feng Qingzi had allowed Fault to seize the chance to strike. This was intolerable. Huff! Lin Fan switched out to the heaven and earth smelt. That single finger was something that Lin Fan could not defend against even with his current strength. As such, he could only hide within the heaven and earth smelt to tide it through. Old man, attention, please. Don't let Fault get the chance to strike out again. Today, I'll take down this Saint for sure. Lin Fan hollered out as he was determined to defeat Saint. Chapter 755, Sneaky Disturbance. Chapter 755, Sneaky Disturbance. Ants. How dare a bunch of ants such as yourselves try to kill me? Today, I'll have you guys pay a terrible price for that. Saint hollered out entirely. Those bloodshot eyes of his seemed as though they wanted to devour the entire world. Cruel roared out as well. In his eyes, the Saint before him right now was the biggest enemy ever. Damn it, how in the world did this guy turn this strong? To think that he's even showing signs of being able to suppress me. Saint wasn't bothered about anyone else right now. At this moment, the amount of fighting strength that was exuded from Cruel was far beyond Saint's imagination. Cruel, you're seeking death. Saint howled out as all the muscles on his body began to expand furiously. Bam! A tremendous amount of energy erupted forth from his body and ejected the flying heavens out of his anus as well. The moment Lin Fan caught sight of this, he could not help but yelp in exclamation. A single fart to shock the world. How powerful was this? Master, we've tried our best. Flying heavens floated gently beside Lin Fan and commented dejectedly. It was quite a disappointment that they did not manage to crush the other party entirely. Lin Fan just kept it back into his paradise. All the tree branches of the mythical parasol tree were floating around in the void at this very moment. One by one, they pierced out of the void, as if they were rooted in countless worlds out there. Saint's brows furrowed, as the aura being given off by these tree branches did not give him a good feeling. All of a sudden, his expression changed starkly. Mythical parasol tree. ... Cruel, go at him and whack him brutally. At this moment, the only one who could match up against Saint was none other than Cruel. There was no one else who held the same strength. Just what sort of a method did that lad used to have Cruel obey him like this? This is inconceivable. Namo Saint Emperor gasped out in astonishment. The female empress was equally taken aback in her heart. Everything was way too surreal for her right now. Could this be the purification skill of the Buddha race? After the female empress recovered from her shock, she looked at the Buddhist nature that was emanating out of Cruel and commented out her suspicion. If one were to talk about reforming others, amongst the thousands of races, the skill of purification belonging to the Buddha race would definitely be the strongest of them all. However, if it were just that skill of purification, how could it reform an utmost being of the ancient race? Unless, it's that long-lost great Buddha's light of purification. By the time her thought got to this point, the female empress was at a complete loss for words. Impossible. The great Buddha's light of purification has been lost in history for a long time now. Even in the Namo island where the intent of the old ancient Buddha lives, there's no trace of this great Buddha's light of purification. Namo Saint Emperor replied with utmost certainty. Obtaining the Namo island was as good as inheriting all the skills of the Buddha race for the Namo Saint Emperor. Within the Namo island, there were countless 7 emotions and 6 world desires of great, powerful beings from the Buddha race that were entrusted to it. There was no shortage of powerful beings who had placed their emotions there. However, even within the memories of these great powerful beings, there was no trace of the great Buddha's light of purification at all. According to the rumors, the great Buddha's light of purification was lost after a great powerful being from the Buddha race fell. However, Namo Saint Emperor knew of the truth. A long time ago, amongst the first batches of Buddha race beings that had ascended into the ancient saint world, there was a powerful being who wielded the great Buddha's light of purification. Because of that, he had almost reformed the entire ancient race under him. For that, the heavens will chose to take action eventually and stood in to have that great being slain personally. This was a secret that no one else knew about. If not for the Namo island, Namo Saint Emperor would not have known of these secrets either. If it isn't the great Buddha's light of purification, what other sort of godly technique could it be that could reform an utmost being? The female empress reversed the question. For a moment, Namo Saint Emperor did not know how to reply at all. Everything seemed way too impossible to him right now. As an utmost being of the ancient race, it was also because of the heavens' will that Krul was able to obtain an eternal god seat. However, compared to Saint and the other utmost beings, his foundation was still slightly weaker. Therefore, Krul was the weakest out of the 8 utmost beings. But, now that the object between Krul's groin was given a harsh kick, it unleashed every single last bit of potential within his body explosively. The previous state of the true origin's crushing kick was balls kicking. And balls kicking had a special function to invoke the hidden potential within oneself. This single kick of his that targeted at one's nuggets was something Lin Fan had tested out before. The amount of battle prowess that could be unleashed from this was heaven-defying. However, given the situation right now, even if Lin Fan were to kick himself, he shouldn't be able to defeat Saint. Therefore, there was no need for him to endure that unnecessary pain. Damn it, the tree branches of this mythical parasol tree are too damned annoying. The powers of Saint rumbled out profusely as they caused Krul to retreat. In between this battle of Krul and Saint, the tree branches of the mythical parasol tree were also doing their part in disturbing Saint insanely. For Saint, this was thoroughly intolerable. November LBJNN. FCK. Seems like yours truly can only try to sneak an attack on this guy. If I were to rush up just like this, I might even be killed by him. Lin Fan dodged left and right. He noticed that Saint's glare right now was extremely piercing. Each time his gaze met with Saint's eyes, they emitted an intense killing intent. This killing intent dug into Lin Fan's heart like a straight current. Ant-like being, your utmost is going to kill you right now. Saint could really bear with it no longer. Between this battle of his with Krul, that damned human would come and disturb him from time to time. How could Saint endure this? Bam! Suddenly, Saint's figure appeared before Lin Fan as he slapped out with a ferocious palm. The Saint right now was getting smarter. He knew that the first one who needed to be killed was Lin Fan. I'll hide. At this moment, Lin Fan retreated into the heaven and earth smelt shamelessly. Clang! The tremendous force slammed onto the heaven and earth smelt and was repelled instantly. Come on, continue to try FC king me up. Hee hee. Lin Fan pushed open the front lid of the heaven and earth smelt and mocked out. Damn it, the heaven and earth smelt was truly an utmost treasure of all utmost treasures. To think that it wouldn't even budge after that single ferocious attack of his. In fact, the amount of power that was reflected back was even more startling for Saint. At this moment where Saint was reflecting on his thoughts, Krul pounced on him like a rabid dog. Krul, you're going to pay the price for your actions. Saint was incensed right now. Both his hands jerked as the void started vibrating and a long spear bolted out. This spear was boundless like a dragon as it swiveled over. Piercing out, all sorts of laws were infused within that spear. The moment the spear pierced out, the world froze up as though time had stopped. Krul, go to hell. Saint bellowed as he raised his powers to the maximum. Against this formidably terrifying spear, Cruel's expression did not change at all. As he moved his finger, it was like a dragon, tiger, and even leopard at times. All sorts of transformations took place. Within this short period of time, Cruel seemed to have displayed the most profound of all martial arts skills in this entire world. In the face of Cruel of now, every other martial arts seemed to pale in comparison at this very moment. HMPH. Infinite Spirit's Mythical Fist. This was a skill that your utmost here deemed as too lowly for me to learn. How dare you display that before me? You're just seeking your own humiliation. Cruel laughed coldly. A single spear to pierce through everything. However, at that moment, Saint's face changed. He realized that the long spear in his hands had suddenly seemed to weigh a ton, and he found it impossible to use his skills. When he turned around, he realized that those darn tree branches had come around from the back once more. Saint bellowed out. You, bam, a battle between utmost beings would almost always be decided by a single moment. The almost infinite stances of Cruel were sent out as he placed his palms together to materialize a hammer that thumped down straight in the center of Saint's chest with a loud bam. An infinite number of martial arts Tao culminated at this single point, unleashing a terrifying power from them. This irresistible power pierced through Saint's chest, causing him to be knocked back intensely. The spear in his hands fell down as well. Good work. Lin Fan's heart leapt with joy as he snatched that utmost treasure of a spear over. The weapon spirit within it started bellowing instantly, wanting to break free from within. Damn it! Looking at how that utmost treasure spear of his was snatched away by the human, Saint was burning in wrath. This was an inextinguishable shame for him. Chapter 756. The Powerful Innate Gift of the Samsung Race. Chapter 756. The Powerful Innate Gift of the Samsung Race. Cruel, that's right, continue that way. Once we're done with all this, Master here will treat you to a good meal. Most of Lin Fan's body was hidden within the heaven and earth smelt. The only thing that was revealed right now was his head. Yes, Master, Cruel replied calmly without even a single bit of emotion on his face. That single hammer just now has caused Saint's chest to dent in entirely. However, it healed up in the blink of an eye. If not for Lin Fan's help, Cruel might truly not be a match for this guy. Shing! Suddenly, the void trembled as a stream of light bolted out to the back of Lin Fan's head almost undetectable. Clang! Holy FCK! That was too close. You're too despicable, Saint. Since you can't CK me up, you sneak an attack on me. Can you leave some dignity for yourself? Lin Fan broke out and scolded. Lin Fan had finally witnessed the shamelessness of this guy thoroughly for himself. Saint was so angered that his body was quivering uncontrollably. This was some anger that he had to bear with right now but couldn't endure any longer. Good, very good. Didn't you want to try and use your mythical parasol tree to suppress your utmost? Your utmost shall fulfill your wishes then. Time to let you know of the consequences of messing with your utmost here. Saint bellowed out as he opened up his paradise. Thousands and thousands of living beings shot out from it. Lin Fan was a little taken aback at everything before him. What was this guy up to? Did he realize that he couldn't win the fight, so he was getting help from others to fight for him? But, the cultivation states of these guys didn't seem all that high either. NOVLP in .C ohm. On an average, they were all divine celestial level 5 or 6, and that was all. But, even all those divine celestials would just be destroyed with a single palm of his Samsung race. When Namo Saint Emperor caught sight of these living beings, he could not figure out what was going on for a moment either. However, he exclaimed out in shock all of a sudden. Lin Fan, you've got to watch out. This is the Samsung race. It's alright, their cultivation states are so weak. They're barely enough to even fit in my teeth gaps. Lin Fan waved his hand dismissively, expressing his disregard. It's not that. Namo Saint Emperor had wanted to carry on, but it was too late. The only thing that remained was the cold smirk on the lips of Saint. Flicking out with his finger, a Samsung race living being bolted out. And, you shall regret this for the little time that's left of your puny life. Saint finally spoke up while those sinister eyes of his glowed with a raging fire. It's not what? Lin Fan was stunned, unable to understand the current situation. How could this divine celestial level 5 state Samsung race being do anything to yours truly? However, Lin Fan shut his mouth back almost immediately after. The scene that came all too suddenly next had him stunned silly. Boom, that divine celestial level 5 Samsung race being flew before those tree branches. Suddenly, its body started expanding as though it had taken some sort of a pill before exploding. Boom! The sound of that explosion reverberated through the world as an immense shockwave rippled out in its aftermath. Quite a number of those tree branches of the mythical parasol tree were blown off all of a sudden. Holy FCK, Samsung race, since when have they had such an ability? Lin Fan was completely stunned. This was way too mother-seeking scary. That's what I wanted to tell you. Amongst the beings of the thousands of races, the Samsung race has the strongest self-destruction powers. Even the ancient race beings are not willing to engage much with these Samsung race beings who can explode at any moment. Namo Saint Emperor sighed out. The Samsung race had not started out like this from the very beginning. However, as they evolved and changed, their self-destruction capabilities got even more powerful. And right now, there were less Samsung race beings out among the thousands of races. Seemed like the reason behind it was because they had been captured by Saint. Holy FCK, why didn't you say this earlier? Lin Fan was about to cry out right now. Was this even humane? To think that the self-destruction powers that were brought forth by a divine celestial level 5 Samsung race being could blast a divine celestial level 9 state being into a crippled state. The mythical parasol tree was crying out right now. Evidently, it was really painful. Oh, my little tree. Don't cry now. Daddy here will take revenge for you. Sensing the tears of his mythical parasol tree, Lin Fan felt really pained as well. This was his mythical parasol tree that he had painstakingly nurtured and cultivated. And now that it was finally showing some powers, this bloody beast was trying to play a self-destruction game with it. Instantly, Lin Fan kept back his mythical parasol tree. Looking at the dense cluster of Samsung race beings in the sky, Lin Fan was having a real big headache. If all of them were to self-destruct, wouldn't they be annihilated entirely? Ant, you had better hide in that smelt of yours for all eternity. Once your utmost is done with this traitor, I'm going to come take care of you. Saint growled out as that berserk gaze of his glared straight at Lin Fan. As long as that fella dared to come out, the only thing that would welcome him would be the self-destruction of the Samsung race beings. Back when Saint had yet to turn into an utmost being, he had used this technique to kill off countless powerful beings. And ever since he turned into the utmost being, he took care of the Samsung race beings by killing and forcing them into his paradise so that they could be his undead warriors. After the nurturing over countless of years, Saint had trained up a huge bunch of Samsung race beings. The amount of power that could be brought forth by them was monstrous. Even if it were a powerful being of divine celestial level 10, they would almost definitely be blasted into smithereens with it. Cruel, I'm going to torture you slowly till you die. Saint was no longer concerned with Lin Fan as he turned his attention towards Cruel. Once upon a time, Cruel was nothing but an ant-like servant in Saint's hands, who could only serve beneath his feet. To think that this guy would have gotten big enough balls to pit himself against the ladder. If he didn't kill this guy, what authority would he have to speak of after this day? Looking at how Saint was using everything he had to retaliate, Fault smirked out. Feng Qingzi, this time around, you're all going to fall right here. Fault scoffed out coldly. He was on equal footing with Feng Qingzi. If he wanted to kill Feng Qingzi, it would be extremely difficult. However, as long as Saint could deal with those ants there, even if Feng Qingzi were alive at that time, he would have to die here nevertheless. Aya, FCK my life. This is some FCKED up plan he's got there. What shall your daddy do? Lin Fan was hidden within the heaven and earth smelt. For a moment, he did not know what to do. Even though it was extremely safe for him to hide here, he couldn't possibly hide for the rest of his life. That's right, I can try using that great Buddha's light of purification. Now that his purification had been trained up to the great Buddha's light of purification, the ability to purify and reform others was practically heaven revolting. There was no way these divine celestial level 5 and 6 state Samsung race beings would be able to defend against that at all. Through the heaven and earth smelt, Lin Fan saw that Saint and Cruel were going at it once more. For now, there was no distinct victor just yet. However, if this were to carry on, Lin Fan knew that Cruel would lose out very quickly. The faces of Namo Saint Emperor and the female Empress focused up as they nodded their heads to one another. Even though they did not know why Cruel would obey the words of that lad, the moment now was critical. They could only give it a shot. Lin Fan opened up the front lid of the smelt. Just as he was about to push his head out to check it out, a Samsung race being bolted over and exploded right above the heaven and earth smelt. Holy FCK, this guy is giving me no FC King chances at all. All this while, Lin Fan had always thought that his plans were really well thought out. To think that this saint would be hiding his true face and could come up with such intricate plans as well. Lin Fan hesitated for a moment before entering stealth mode. He then sneakily opened up the front lid of the smelt once more. Indeed, it was as he had thought. Those dazed Samsung race beings would not take any actions as long as they didn't see him. HMPH. Blow up yours truly shall show you guys true power. Lin Fan raised his finger and moved his mouth. A strain of purifying light swiveled around the world. Great Buddha's light of purification. Boom. Suddenly, the world rumbled as golden scriptures lined the entire sky, caging up the Samsung race beings entirely. Ding. Purification success. Ding. Purification success. When Saint sensed the weird happenings, he jerked his head back. However, he saw something absolutely unbelievable. You piece of dogs *T. Stop now. Saint could sense his connection with the Samsung race beings getting weaker by the moment, as though it could break off at any time. HMPH. Don't even dream of heading over. When Namo Saint Emperor caught sight of everything in the distance, his face changed. Wasn't that the great Buddha's light of purification? Boundless dimension. Namo Saint Emperor spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. He was practically using his core essence right now, putting his very own life at risk. Instantly, a mysterious power burst forth, and the area around Saint started contorting violently. This was the absolute power of the Namo Saint Emperor, a skill that allowed him to forcefully manipulate both space and time. Saint was unable to resist the distorting changes of the twisting power of space and time around him right now. However, given his strength, this pocket of dimension wouldn't be able to hold him in there for much longer either. Chapter 757. This way of fighting is pretty shameless. Chapter 757. This way of fighting is pretty shameless. Amitabha, convert under me, and you shall never return to the cycle of reincarnation. The purifying Buddha shall descend upon the world. Lin Fan chanted out scriptures as his face started changing into one of an immense benevolence. When the living beings caught sight of this face, they felt a murmur passing through their hearts. The golden scriptures that were lining the sky let off a bedazzling Buddhist light that lit up the entire place before culminating into a ball. Ever since the skill of purification had evolved into the great Buddha's light of purification, Lin Fan had not used it at all. But despite his familiarity with purification, the sight of the skill being displayed out right now was still breathtaking. This impact was extraordinary. Bam! The Buddhist light that had culminated into a ball burst open. All of a sudden, the entire world seemed to be a place just like the paradise land of bliss where heavenly gods revolved and danced about. Some of them looked menacing, some of them benevolent, while some of them were expressionless and calm. And, all of these heavenly god Buddhas were all revolving around a single gigantic golden Buddha who was seated on a lotus. That merciful face of his was enough to have even the vilest and evilest being in this world repenting for their sins and getting converted with a refreshed heart. The face of that golden Buddha was dignified. As he raised a single finger, Buddha flowers floated all around him. Huge golden words were coming out from his mouth and were boundless. Purify. At that moment, the world fell silent and turned exceptionally harmonious. Those dazed-looking Samsung race beings suddenly had their eyes filled with a Buddhist light as they turned their gaze towards Lin Fan. It was as though they had finally found the Lord of their beliefs right now and were filled with conviction. Ding! Purification success. At this moment, the experience points of the great Buddha's light of purification were skyrocketing up relentlessly. Level 1, Level 2, Level 3, converting all of these ancient race beings allowed the great Buddha's light of purification to be raised to the third level instantly. In fact, Lin Fan could even feel his power of purifying light being raised. Any being below divine celestial level should be reformed with just a single look of his. Indeed, this great Buddha's light of purification is one hell of a sick skill. I wonder what sort of a powerful being it must be who could craft out a skill as such. This is an utter steal. At this moment, Lin Fan could truly understand the power of the great Buddha's light of purification. If he were to train this up to its peak, wouldn't he be able to purify every single living thing in this world? By then, who in this universe could even escape this purifying skill? Arg, you ants, I'm going to kill you all. Saint bellowed out as he tore apart that distorted dimension that locked him in. Striding out with a large step, it seemed as though he had crossed an entire world as he appeared in the face of everyone once again. But, just as Saint was about to strike out, he realized that Namo Saint Emperor, Female Empress, and Cruel were all standing in a row far away, as though they were really fearful of him. Even if you guys are going to escape that far, your utmost here is going to kill you guys. Saint screamed out. Right now, the fact that these guys were avoiding him was evidence of their fear for him. But, even if that were the case, it wouldn't extinguish the hatred within his heart right now. Saint was bent on killing this bunch of ants. Saint, Suddenly, a voice rang out from behind him. Saint jerked his head back instantly. But when he turned around, his face took a huge turn. Bam! An exploding sound permeated the world. Go and explode. As though they were ghouls, 3 living beings of the Samsung race floated behind Saint. The moment he turned around, they exploded in his face. This was quite a frightening sight to behold. Lin Fan could see that Saint's body was starting to distort within the explosion. The radius of explosion was way too huge. This was practically something that could cause the entire heaven to topple over and ghosts and gods to wail out. Saint, yours truly had no other choice but to do this. I wonder how badly injured you are right now, Lin Fan said with a heartbroken expression. However, he was all smiles right now internally as the void behind him trembled slightly. If this Saint would still dare to go on a rampage like that again, he would give him another round. If 1 explosion couldn't kill him, 2 then. That lad is really savage. When Namo Saint Emperor caught sight of everything, he could not help but exclaim out. Looking at everything before her, the female empress could not help but nod her head silently and sigh as well. Seemed like she had truly deserved to be killed by this lad back in the Xuanwang world. After all, anyone who pit themselves against such a despicable and shameless fellow would undoubtedly be just courting death. Arg! All of a sudden, a maddened roar boomed out. That was Saint's voice, and he was about to go insane right now. This was his Samsung race. To think that this damned ant would dare to use his own Samsung race on himself. This was intolerable. You're courting death. While the explosion this time around did not have much of an impact on Saint, this was one hell of a humiliation for him. Your utmost swears to tear you up to shreds so that you can endure an eternity of suffering. Saint was incensed as a boundless rage burst forth from him like a burning blaze that stained the entire sky red. Seems like Samsung race beings of divine celestial level 4 pose no threat to Saint at all. However, Lin Fan could tell that the explosive power earlier on was pretty formidable. Even if it were a divine celestial level 7 state being, if they were to take that head on, they would definitely have their skins peeled even if they weren't dead. FCK your mother. Lin Fan gave him some precious advice before attacking from left and right as he tossed 2 Samsung race beings over directly with 1 Samsung race being on each side. Go forth and explode, my dear little Samsung race buddies. This was a rage formed by the embarrassment of the utmost being of the ancient race. He could not believe that this damned human would dare to provoke him right now. You damned lad, couldn't you at least warn us first before tossing them? When Namo Saint Emperor saw the lad tossing yet another 2 Samsung race beings, his face changed as he leapt back instantly. Bam! The entire void quaked once more. This time around, the Samsung race beings used were way stronger than the 3 from before. Saint could not bear with this any longer. His body stood firm without falling in the face of these explosions. You are courting death. Saint clenched through his teeth and seethed out. To think that these Samsung race beings that he had reared would be the weapon of that human right now. Everyone, make way, I'm going to go crazy. At this moment, Lin Fan hid in the heaven and earth smelt. He then poked out his head and looked at Saint. Let us go, heaven and earth smelt. Lin Fan patted his heaven and earth smelt as it bolted out towards Saint instantly. This lad, just what is he trying to do again? The Namo Saint Emperor asked in shock. I've got no idea, but it definitely shouldn't be anything good. We should hurry up and get out. The female empress felt her heart being gripped by an ominous feeling. You're courting death. When Saint caught sight of how this ant-like human would dare to come at him, he let out a cold smirk. Since this was the case, he was going to teach this human the true meaning of torment. Now that he was swapping an air gun for a cannon, it was time to FCK things up. PSHEW. The heaven and earth smelt brought Lin Fan to fly through the void. Go to hell. Looking at how Lin Fan was darting at him, Saint struck out without hesitation. Look at how powerful I am. Samsung explosion. Lin Fan asked and said nothing as he just threw out an entire bunch of Samsung race beings before shutting that front lid of his heaven and earth smelt. He couldn't care about anything anymore. He just wanted to see how long more this Saint could endure. Initially, Saint thought that this human was courting death by coming to him head-on. However, when he caught sight of how that human was throwing that entire bunch of Samsung race beings at him, his face changed. And, it suddenly struck him that the defensive capabilities of that heaven and earth smelt were extremely frightening. But by now, it was all too late for him. This bunch of Samsung race beings were ever so dazzling. Looking like a radiant and glorious sun, they let out a magnificent gleam. Boom! Lin Fan closed the heaven and earth smelt's front lid shut and hid within it. Through the walls of the smelt, he looked at the situation outside. I wonder if Saint can hold out through this. N-O-V-E in .c ohm. This was no ordinary explosion this time around. Even now that the Namo Saint Emperor and the female Empress had hidden really far away, they could even feel the shockwave that was emitted from the aftermath. This lad is really way too savage. Even a divine celestial level 9 state being would be blown to bits by an explosion of this scale. When Feng Qingzi caught sight of everything before him, he burst out laughing, haha. My good dear disciple, indeed, you are the dear disciple of this old man. His fight with fault gave him no room to breathe at all. However, now that there was such a huge commotion being caused, even they could feel the repercussions. However, for Feng Qingzi, this was a turn of events. The fact that Lin Fan was in possession of a legendary weapon such as the heaven and earth smelt coupled with this self-exploding Samsung race beings, who else in this world would dare to try approaching him any longer? It was just that, this way of fighting was pretty shameless. Chapter 758, Saint Fights Alone. Chapter 758, Saint Fights Alone. The Samsung race is truly a godly weapon of self-destruction. The higher their cultivation states, the more destructive their explosion gets. At times, they would even explode in the least expected moments. That's the sickest property they have. That's because you'll never know when the Samsung race beings are in a bad mood and decide to take you up on a tour with them to the heavens. Hiding within the heaven and earth smelt and checking out the situation outside, Lin Fan could not help but take in a breath of cold air. This time around, the explosive power was truly heaven-defying. Even the void had started to get distorted. In fact, even Lin Fan, who was just hiding in the heaven and earth smelt and watching Saint endure the torments within the contorting void, felt that this body of his which was blessed by the heavens might not be able to withstand it either. Beast, I'm going to kill you. Saint hollered out as his aura expanded out. This mighty aura spread out through the entire world as that berserk body of his was almost causing Lin Fan to be dumbfounded. Holy FCK, this Saint is quite resilient, isn't he? Even all of these Samsung race beings may not be able to kill him. The bunch of Samsung race beings that Lin Fan had tossed earlier on was really ferocious. Even if it were the Namo Saint Emperor and the female Empress, they would definitely be blown up such that their innards would fly all around if they were in the center of this explosion. But, even in Saint's case, his skin was showing signs of being torn apart. Not good. Seems like I've got to add on more power to it. Seated within the heaven and earth smelt, Lin Fan let out a few more Samsung race beings. Looking at them, he sighed gently. All of you guys are good examples. The people will remember you guys. Without saying anything more, a strain of spirit of Bigra floated out gently and fused into the bodies of these Samsung race beings. Repress it within their bodies first before blowing up later. Lin Fan did not want to waste this round of explosion by the Samsung race beings. Hence, he got the spirit of Bigra to slow down first. Lin Fan had full confidence that he could make Saint pay with the explosion this time around. But of course, the prerequisite was for Saint to not run away from it. If Saint were to run away, there could truly be no one who could stop him. Instantly, Lin Fan utilized his True Origins crushing kick. This was a booster to help the Samsung race beings unleash their strongest potential, so that they could let out the wildest explosion possible. Come on out. At this moment, Saint was howling out with bloodshot eyes. He was truly incensed. To think that this beast would dare to do this to him. Namo Saint Emperor and the female Empress were hidden pretty far right now. Looking at this battered and exhausted Saint, they realized that the change of events was far too great. The magnificence of the female Empress was unmatched in the generation with those breathtaking features of hers. However, at this moment, those red lips of hers were parted slightly as she was totally dumbfounded. This was clearly a dead end for them earlier on. To think that the tides would turn like this. You damned cowardly tortoise, are you going to hide in there for the rest of your life? Saint circled around the heaven and earth smelt while screaming out. The moment Lin Fan heard the taunts from the outside, he could naturally not bear with it. Clang! This ringing sound gave Saint such a shock that he jumped back, thinking that the dog's tea was going to come out and FCK him up. But when he saw the front lid of the smelt opening up, he turned wary. He wanted to rush in and kill that guy entirely. However, he had no clue about how this treasure worked. For a moment or so, he truly did not dare to act foolishly. Come on, out. Saint was breathing heavily right now. Even though the explosion earlier on hadn't done much harm to him, it caused his blood to rumble nevertheless. This was a situation that he had never encountered after becoming an utmost being. Come on in if you've got the guts. Lin Fan was within the heaven and earth smelt right now. No matter what, he was not going to get out. If this saint fella had the guts to come in, it would just be death awaiting him. He would just slam the front lid and follow up with some wild bashings to have this saint ponder over his life. Good. You don't want to come out, right? Then, your utmost being shall have them killed. Saint was so enraged that he did not know what to do anymore. He knew that the other party was right in front of him, yet he did not dare to engage. In that instant, Saint jerked his head back and looked at the Namo Saint Emperor and the female Empress. All of you shall have to die. But, the very moment he turned his head around, Saint felt a chilling aura surge into his heart as though something big was about to happen. Go on and explode. At that moment, Lin Fan seized this opportunity and tossed out all of those rampaging Samsung race beings, then shut the lid of the smelt immediately. Bam, bam, this time around, the power of the explosion was practically toppling the entire heaven and earth, giving off a gut-smashing feeling. Horrifying. This was way too horrifying. UB****, do you think that this will deal any damage to your utmost being? You. Arg. Before Saint could even finish his sentence, he was sent howling in pain due to the power of the explosion. Even though the explosive powers brought forth by these Samsung race beings were tremendous, they were far from enough to kill Saint. However, under the shameless boosting of their powers by Lin Fan, even Saint could feel a strain of terror. This explosive power is way stronger than before. The Namo Saint Emperor's powers were rumbling to form a protective barrier in order to repel the aftershock. Namo Saint Emperor could no longer make out the current situation anymore. What in the world was happening right now? In the blink of an eye, the tables had totally turned. This was entirely unbelievable. Namo Saint Emperor had truly never seen an utmost being who was being tricked so badly. This was practically inhumane. Haha, Saint, how was that? Pleasurable. Lin Fan burst out laughing. This Samsung race was some good sh**t indeed. This power of the explosion was literally heaven revolting. All toss, all toss. Within the heaven and earth smelt, Lin Fan's hands moved non-stop as he tossed the Samsung race beings out one by one. Bam, bam, damn it, come on out if you've got the guts, you beast. Your utmost will definitely have you killed. Saint was deranged right now. Under the power of the explosion, even that mighty body of his was starting to crack apart despite being imperishable through all the ancient times. Ugh, at this point, he finally spat out blood. To think that the immensely formidable Saint would actually spit out blood under this relentless assault of explosions. Good disciple, hand Saint over to this old man. Go and injure Fault by blowing him up. Feng Qingzi, who was on even grounds with Fault, suddenly darted before Saint. FCK, old man, this is my prey. Lin Fan had not expected that even that old man Feng Qingzi would know how to take advantage of a fallen enemy to pulverize him. However, Lin Fan knew that whether or not they could keep these two utmost beings here depended on him entirely. November LBJNN. As the most valuable player on the ground, the pressure on him was immense. Saint, why did you have to take out the Samsung race beings? Why you? Fault was enraged at everything that was happening right now as well. The outcome of this battle was all on Saint. If he hadn't summoned the Samsung race beings, this wouldn't have happened, as the human wouldn't have had the chance to seize that opportunity. However, there was one thing that Fault couldn't get. Why in the world did the Samsung race possess such tremendous self-destruction capabilities? Their powers had practically multiplied by many folds. Even if it were him who was at the center of the explosion right now, he might not be able to hang on. Fault's face was grim right now as he contemplated through things. The situation right now wasn't looking too good. Fault, your daddy is coming. Are you ready? Lin Fan remained hidden in the heaven and earth smelt as he flew towards Fault along with the smelt. After battling with Feng Qingzi up till now, Fault was extremely familiar with the tricks of this lad. There was no way out of this plan of his. Pishu. Instantly, a bunch of Samsung race beings were tossed over. Those Samsung race beings were flushed with bloodshot eyes as they let off a berserk aura, seeming completely insane. Fault felt his goosebumps standing all over his back. How would he dare to remain at this place? Saint, all the best to you. Without any hesitation, Fault dove into the void as he made his furious escape. He had already thought this through. If he were to be targeted by that damned fella, he might very well end up in the same state as Saint, where he was blown into an incomprehensible state. If that were the case, escaping was the only true solution out of this. There was no way he was going to wait for death along with Saint right here. Feng Qingzi and Cruel, just those two alone would be able to give them a run for their money. And that was even before they included that devious being who would throw a bunch of Samsung race beings from time to time. Holy FCK, he's running. Don't run, hurry up and come back so that we can continue fighting for a good 300 rounds. If Fault wanted to escape, no one could stand in his way. Disciple, don't bother chasing after him anymore. This is a great opportunity. Let us just suppress Saint entirely. Feng Qingzi yelled out excitedly. This was a rare opportunity of a lifetime. Other than 10,000 years ago, there had never been another event of someone slaying an utmost being. When Saint saw how he was surrounded by all sides, he was completely flabbergasted. Fault, Saint grit his teeth tightly. To think that Fault would choose to make his escape at this very moment. Pishu, Pishu, right at this moment, something even more chilling for Saint happened. Countless Samsung race beings were being tossed out of the heaven and earth smelt at this very instant. They then surrounded him as they formed a circle around him. Old man, leave this fella to me. You guys go and seal the void around this area. We must definitely not give him the chance to escape. Lin Fan remarked. Alright, looking at the dense cluster of Samsung race beings before him, Feng Qingzi felt shivers down his spine for a moment. He knew what this dear disciple of his was going to do. At this moment, even he felt sorry for Saint. If they were to really self-destruct in this group, the outcome would be utterly terrifying. Chapter 759, Ancient Saint Sacrificial Altar. Chapter 759, Ancient Saint Sacrificial Altar. At this moment, the entire world changed. Saint was thoroughly encircled at this moment as those Samsung race beings around him glared at him covetously. Their eyes were entirely bloodshot, as if they were on crack. That feeling of them being able to explode at any moment gave Saint a feeling that he might truly be faced with a tragedy this time around. Lin Fan opened up his front lid and looked at Saint, who was trapped in the center right now, then burst out laughing uncontrollably. Utmost being Saint, you must not have imagined that things could turn out like this, right? The moment Fault saw that something was amiss, he ran off instantly without thinking twice to abandon you. Seems like the both of you have some deep ties indeed. Lin Fan shook his head and lamented with a heartbroken expression. It was as though he was feeling pity towards everything that Saint was about to be faced with. Beast, I am an utmost being of the ancient race who is blessed by the heaven's will. You guys don't have what it takes to kill me. Saint howled out. He personally knew how troublesome his current situation was. All these Samsung race beings were reared by him. Thus, he knew just how strong their explosions were. And, this was especially so after how the previous round of explosion had far surpassed his expectations. Heaven's will, heaven's will, heaven's will. Faced with an impasse right now, Saint could only rear his head into the sky and scream out. The voice tore through everything and pierced straight into the heavens. All of you, make way. Saint is going to put his life at it now. Even though Lin Fan did not know what Saint was up to, he did not dare to underestimate this situation. After all, this was an utmost being they were talking about. Even at the end of the road, what he could do wasn't something they could match up with. And the most crucial thing was that, one would always repeat the most important things thrice. Saint had clearly just yelled for the heavens will thrice. Seemed like he was going into SEED mode too. Boom, a mighty explosion boomed out. Deep in the void, a pitch-black vortex with an immeasurable depth appeared suddenly, possessing a bone-chilling aura. A power of this sort. Could it be the heaven's will? Everyone raised their heads. Even Lin Fan could not help but look over. I am an utmost being of the ancient race. The humiliation that I have received from you guys today, I shall cleanse it with your fresh blood. As he raised both his hands, the eyes of Saint were burning. He knew that if he didn't go at it with his life, he might probably die right here today. He was an utmost being of the ancient race. How could he possibly die in the hands of a bunch of ants? That damned Fault, to think that he would dare to escape this place out of fear. Once he was done with these ants, he would definitely have Fault pay a painful price for that. Bam! Saint's body started ripping apart. However, there was no blood flowing out of those wounds. There was just a mystifying aura that swiveled out before connecting with that vortex. Bam! The vortex burst open as a stream of light flowed down like a waterfall. The light was bedazzling and the aura was astounding, rendering everyone shocked. That's the eternal throne. Within the vortex, a throne was slowly descending out of it in the world. Clouds were shrouding that throne as it brought forth a domineering aura which reverberated out in all directions. That eternal aura sucked everyone's gaze towards it. Saint stepped out. With him as the center, a series of ripples appeared out in circles one after another. These ripples expanded out. Each time they increased in radius, Saint's aura strengthened by a fraction. All of a sudden, a gigantic sacrificial altar appeared, rising out of these ripples. When Saint stepped up onto the sacrificial altar, his aura turned ever more mysterious. The moment the sacrificial altar appeared, the entire world trembled as the voids began to crack out as though they were dealt some devastating blow. Lin Fan frowned. He could sense an incredible aura emanating out of this sacrificial altar. In fact, this aura was really familiar, as though he knew it from somewhere. Instantly, Lin Fan opened his eyes widely as he revealed a face of disbelief. Above that sacrificial altar, a series of clouds appeared that presented a series of images one after another. Sacrifice. Sacrifice. Within these images, countless of living beings were offering sacrifices with all sorts of treasures in order to pray for blessings. Some of them sought for strength, some of them for riches, while others for power. In fact, Lin Fan even caught sight of that modern world that he once used to live in. Within a pitch-black house, a group of black-clothed modern men were gathered before a satanic pentagram and chanting some incantations and curses. In the middle of this satanic pentagram stood a high platform, where a woman laid there as though she was some sacrificial object. That image disappeared soon after and was replaced with another image. This is the ancient saint sacrificial altar. Using a sacrificial method, it would fulfill the wishes of the one who offers them a sacrifice, and grant a chance to raise one's own powers. When Feng Qingzi caught sight of everything before him, he gasped out. How could this be? How could this be? Feng Qingzi's face suddenly changed as though he was dealt with some severe blow. His face turned frightfully pale. Senior, what's the meaning of this? Namo Saint Emperor and the female empress were lost, unable to understand just what was so different about this sacrificial altar. Why was Feng Qingzi having such a big reaction? Ha ha ha, Feng Qingzi, it seems like you've finally understood. All of this was caused by you guys. The reason why the ancient race can get stronger than ever was all thanks to you beings of the thousands of races. It's all because of your insatiable greed and sacrifices that allowed the ancient race's heavens will to grow. Saint laughed maniacally as his eyes shone with a streak of insanity. He wanted to become the strongest existence out of all the utmost beings of the ancient race. And, this ancient saint sacrificial altar was his only way there. To think that we would be the very reason for the state we are all in right now. Feng Qingzi gasped in disbelief. A long time ago, the heavens will wasn't the invincible existence it was right now. Amongst the thousands of races, there were countless of geniuses. In fact, there were even existences who could stand up against the heavens will itself. But, as time went by, they gradually discovered that the ancient race was getting stronger over time while the beings of the thousands of races were getting weaker. At the end of it all, the heavens will of the ancient race became a supreme and unparalleled existence who was thoroughly invincible. November LBJNN. Everything that had happened, every single thing, to Feng Qingzi, it was all because the ancient race was too strong and had snatched over too many resources that they could strengthen themselves and turn so formidable. But, by the looks of it, this wasn't the case. It was the beings from the thousands of races who had personally carried up the ancient race onto this throne they were on right now. That's right, all of this was caused by you guys. You can't blame us from the ancient race. However, you will all die today. I am going to utilize the ancient saint sacrificial altar and use the power that has been accumulated over countless of years to crush you guys entirely. Saint laughed in a deranged manner. Boom, all of a sudden, a formidable power burst forth from above the ancient saint sacrificial altar. This power was extremely mighty, rendering one practically defenseless against it. FCK, seems like yours truly had once given this ancient race a booster for their powers as well. Lin Fan was no fool. How could he not understand what was going on after hearing everything that went through till now? Back when he was in the Xuanwang world, Lin Fan had mistakenly thought that this sacrificing thing was some good sh*t. As long as he had enough treasures, he could do anything he wanted. But, it seemed like it was all used to boost the strength of the ancient race, and that was all. Shing, all of a sudden, a great beam of light burst forth from the ancient saint sacrificial altar. Saint was bathed entirely within this beam of light. Brat, you're having fun hiding within that smelt, right? Your utmost being shall let you stay within that smelt for the rest of your life then. How could this be? Suddenly, Lin Fan's face changed. A gigantic hand suddenly appeared from the ancient saint sacrificial altar. This hand that extended was jet black and covered the entire sky. It grabbed down towards the heaven and earth smelt. As though it was no longer under his control, the heaven and earth smelt started gravitating towards the ancient saint sacrificial altar. Dear disciple, the moment Feng Qingzi caught sight of this, his face changed as he tried to stretch out his hands to assist. However, he realized that the power being emitted from this ancient saint's sacrificial altar was like a wall that made it impossible for them to pass through. Holy FCK, shit has gotten real this time. Seems like the hatred that Saint has towards me is off the charts. I'm the first one he wants dead. Lin Fan was starting to feel a little frantic right now. This was the first time he was feeling that it might not be absolutely safe to hide within the heaven and earth smelt. Old man, you guys leave first. With the smelt guarding me, I shouldn't meet any trouble. Cruel, take them and leave this place. Lin Fan yelled out. He had not expected Saint to be so sick after he entered SEED mode. Just what in the world was this ancient saint's sacrificial altar *T? Did it have to be this twisted? Cruel had already been reformed by Lin Fan. Therefore, he now obeyed Lin Fan's every whim and will. Instantly, he caged up Namo Saint Emperor and the female Empress before delving into the void. All of you will have to die. But before that, your utmost will kill this brat first. It was evident that Saint's hatred for Lin Fan was totally off the hooks right now. Chapter 760. He's not dead from that. Chapter 760. He's not dead from that. At this moment, Lin Fan was turning around hurriedly within the heaven and earth smelt. What am I to do now? Seems like Saint's going to get me for sure. FCK me, why did I have to push Saint this hard? If I had known, I would have just given him a slight scare and have him running off. Why did I have to pressure him like this? Seems like I FCKED up with acting bullshit and I'm getting FCKED this time around. Looking at the situation outside, Lin Fan truly was at a loss for words right now. There shouldn't be any issue since I'm hiding inside this heaven and earth smelt, right? Lin Fan thought to himself secretly. All of a sudden, a huge vibration shook through. Saint lifted his palm and was striking at the heaven and earth smelt repeatedly. Combined with the power of the ancient saint's sacrificial altar, the power that was brought forth by Saint was way stronger than before. If Lin Fan were to face this with his bare physical body, he might have been smashed into dust with this palm strike alone and turned into a clump of mud. Saint's brows furrowed. Evidently, he had not expected this smelt to be this tough as well. To think that even with the booster of the ancient saint's sacrificial altar, he could not break through its defenses. However, as far as Saint was concerned, this brat definitely had to die. Even if he were going to hide within this smelt for the rest of his life, he would have to be live under sufferings. Lin Fan's heart was palpitating right now. He was truly afraid that Saint might just break his heaven and earth smelt with that single strike. At that point, it would truly be a tragedy. Haha, since you can't break it, you can't kill me. How about now? Lin Fan heaved a sigh of relief as his mood lightened up quite a bit. This feeling was simply way too fabulous. He wanted to kill him, yet couldn't do so. What could Saint even do to him? Saint, it's not that I want to comment on your actions. But, as an ancient race being, you can't really always be so old-fashioned and stubborn. Since you can't kill me, how about we call it quits? Let's just take it as though nothing happened, and at least we can still say hi when we cross paths in the future. Lin Fan suggested. Dream on, Saint barked out. The moment the ancient saint's sacrificial altar came out, the entire world quaked due to it. Even the other utmost beings had already sensed the boundless power that was being emanated out by this ancient saint's sacrificial altar. This ancient saint's sacrificial altar had initially belonged to the heaven's will. However, the heaven's will was deep in slumber right now, and under a miraculous encounter, Saint had sneakily managed to bring the ancient saint's sacrificial altar with him. As for the other utmost beings, they did not know of this treasure at all. But now that Saint was being pushed to his wit's end, he had no choice but to display the ancient saint's sacrificial altar. Don't you go overboard, look around your surroundings. There are so many Samsung race beings there. Aren't you afraid of their self-destruction? Lin Fan had not expected this Saint to be this stubborn and really go at him all the way. Self-destruct, HMPH, come at me if you've got the guts. Even though the self-destruction powers of the Samsung race is strong, your utmost now has the booster of the ancient saint's sacrificial altar. Do you think that I'll still be afraid of you? Saint snarled out, unfazed by Lin Fan's threat in the least bit. Holy FCK, this means that there's no more room for negotiation. Lin Fan was angered. This Saint was simply way too audacious. Seemed like there was no way out of this unless he went for a round with him. Lin Fan had been thinking all this while about what plans he could engage so that he could FCK Saint up to death. This ancient saint's sacrificial altar was definitely some good *T. For it to be able to receive sacrifices from all the various worlds out there, this was some mystifying treasure for sure. If he could get his hands on this, he would have earned big time for sure. Without pondering any more, Lin Fan pushed the front lid of his heaven and earth smelt wide open. Burn! Lin Fan could only give it his all and entrust all his hopes onto the Samsung race beings. Right now, the amount of Shenyang pills he had was a full 100 million. These were the pills that the old man had given him. Now that he burned them all up for the Samsung race beings, this might bring forth even more power with their explosions. With their powers ablaze, those normal-looking Samsung race beings seemed as though they had just popped in some pills as a huge amount of power surged into their bodies, strengthening them. Incinerating Shenyang pills in order to let the Samsung race beings get a stronger explosive power. When Saint caught sight of everything before him, he smirked coldly. It was as though none of this bothered him at all. However, all of a sudden, the aura of the Samsung race beings rose like dragons as they burst forth with a tremendous surge of power. This surge of power was causing even Saint to feel a little rattled. HMPH. A deathly struggle, how can your utmost being here give you the chance? Without thinking twice, Saint stepped forth with a heaven-encompassing palm that slammed out of the sky. This palm seemed both human and that of a beast, and was extremely wide. The moment it spread open, the entire world seemed as though it was weaved into this single palm. This was the power of sacrifice. After accumulating an unimaginable power of sacrifices, the amount of power that was being brought forth by Saint right now was incredibly scary. And indeed, Saint was truly different as an utmost being. No matter what, Cruel was an utmost being as well. Yet, in the eyes of Saint, he was nothing but an ant that amounted to nothing. Evidently, this meant that Saint had utmost confidence towards his own strength. Saint was only forced to pull out the ancient Saint sacrificial altar now under these extremely dire circumstances, so it should be something that he did not wish to do if avoidable indeed. If the other utmost treasures were to find out about a treasure of this sort, they would definitely not let him off that easily. Explode. Just like that, 100 million Shenyang pills burned up and the aura of the Samsung race beings skyrocketed up. However, Lin Fan was immensely regretful right now. Back when he had those couple trillions of Shenyang pills, he had really spent them way too lavishly. If he had a couple trillions of Shenyang pills right now, he would have long blown this Saint to bits, saving all these troubles. One by one, these Samsung race beings looked extremely menacing as their eyes were filled with a frenzied power. At this moment, their bodies expanded furiously one after another. Saint was thoroughly surrounded in a circle as his expression could not help but stern up. This was a power not to be scoffed at. Brat, you had better just stay within that heaven and earth smelt of yours. Your utmost has to see just how long more your smelt can endure. November LBJNN. Boom. All of a sudden, the entire world exploded out. Even Feng Qingzi and the others who had escaped a long way now could feel the sudden tremor. What happened to that lad? Namo Saint Emperor remarked worriedly. I'm not sure, but he has that smelt item protecting him. I don't reckon there should be any problems, should there? The female empress replied. Feng Qingzi's face was solemn. Everything that had happened today had a huge emotional impact on him. This was especially the case after that ancient saint's sacrificial altar had Feng Qingzi realizing something big. He said nothing as he cast his sights far into the distance. Even though he had not seen it for himself, through the shockwave of the aftermath, Feng Qingzi could accurately understand the power of that explosion. Even if it were a divine celestial level 10, eternal God state being who had obtained an eternal God seat, they would have been vaporized by that explosion. The amount of power that was created by that explosion had Lin Fan entirely stumped. He was being slammed all over the heaven and earth smelt as though he was in a furious ocean that was raging with waves. The heaven and earth smelt vibrated violently. What's happened to Saint? Is he dead yet? Lin Fan wondered in his heart, not knowing what the actual situation was like outside. However, when he took a look out there, his heart froze up. Saint was filled with blood all over his entire body from head to toe. Even an entire arm was blasted apart by the explosion. Holy FCK, he's not dead even from that. Lin Fan could not dare to imagine any longer. The power of the explosion earlier was practically enough to cause the entire world to topple over. Yet, this saint had taken it head-on tenaciously and yet came out of it alive. This didn't make any bloody sense at all.